like literally sometimes the best part of the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. What Kendrick? I remember when I lived somewhere close to the coast, had a pirate station broadcast off a boat. It was much better than stuff on Main Street. Yeah, and I always wanted to run a pirate radio station here in Indianapolis, but I was more. I am hesitant to do it for two different reasons. One, I don't really want to get my door kicked in.
Yeah, no shiny shoe people.
Yeah, shiny shoe people kicking my door in. Two, I don't want them to trace Spangle to me and then blame Spangle, because they would. Because they'd be like, that's obviously the white man put the black man up to it. We know the black man couldn't do it.
You guys just keep talking.
It's okay.
I'm printing off articles that I should have printed off already.
It's okay. We got people here in the Twitch stream over our IO stream here.
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah.
Hi, Twitch.
Yeah, we've got Wicked Kender in here. We got Christy, some other people. But yeah, but it's, I've got so much packed for this episode. I'm trying to hold it on the back and talk about other stuff. But the other thing is with it, I think the granted, the band is limited, but like I said, the AM band mostly unused. Mostly people don't use the AM band in certain frequencies.
Well,
the FM band in certain. I really think, and I believe if more competition was to happen inside those bands, they would, someone would come up with a solution for it.
So my question there is, yes, the bands are limited, but wouldn't you be able to perhaps digitize the signal, get digital radio the way they have with the analog TV stations now?
Possibly.
I mean,
well, that's the other goofy thing is because there's so many of those signals out there are out there. You can still use them. It's not like we turning it. They say they turned it off, but no, you can't really turn off a radio brand signal. They did the military and certain organizations have reused those old old TV bands.
Right. Yeah. But, it seems to me that we can have more stations now because of the switch over to digital, and it can be encoded differently, and you can basically be receiving all the same data at the same time, and you just choose what to display of what you're receiving.
Correct.
I don't see why we couldn't have something like that for radio, move it over to digital signal the same way we have Sirius.
Yeah, something like that, or just some other simple technology, or some other different technology, kind of but the same way that's why a lot of people listen to podcasts. They'll just download them on their phone or get it live stream, or they freaking get Spotify and just use the 4G LTE network to listen to the radio station that they want to listen to in the network they want it to. They just download from the radio station.
Yeah, the only thing I use my radio for is either playing stuff off my phone or listening to Spangle's Day Job on the way into work. And,
let's see. Wicked Gender said that digital FM is a thing. This is how you know what song is playing. Yeah, but I thought that was supposed to be the encoding on the traffic when they broadcast it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that was part of the header when it was broadcast analog, anyways. Yeah, and yeah, the FM traffic data. The other thing is what do I say? Just people, because people could use the internet. If let's say I decided to do, I switched low key wall to noon or noon on Wednesday instead of doing late. People could still download and I'm not going to do it. I'm not doing that. I just said if. I said if, not doing it.
Yeah, please don't. Yeah. I'd like to participate.
Yeah.
For those of us who are joining us on YouTube, we're about to start the episode. We're just kind of padding while I wrap up some prep that I should have gotten taken care of earlier. But I was playing with my nieces at the park. Much better excuse than doing show prep. I'm just trying to print out these articles, so that's why we're talking about radio.
Yeah, that's why we're talking about radio. And I don't have the YouTube chat up. I'm on Twitch looking at the Twitch chat, so sorry. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah. If I was doing it at noon, I could still talk about the weather, but Indianapolis is the location I want to care about, or any location I want to care about, and still be able to do traffic. I could do a traffic report too, and make it feel like live radio, and just do it straight through Twitch, and just have people just. Of course, the problem is since I'm doing it through video, it will chug someone's data plan.
Yeah, it'll either chug your data plan, or if anything happens, that'll be blamed.
Right. Yeah. course, I could do something and just do an audio only stream and just stream that live out on the internet. That's not awesome. That's not impossible. Now my brain's going on to it, but I'm not. Screw that.
Have to wake up before noon.
I know. Wake up before noon and stuff like that. Honestly, I thought about that because usually at noon, Gunther's usually asleep, has taken her nap. Is at noon.
Right.
She'll take a nap at noon because she'll usually gorge herself on milk and food at 11 o'clock and then pass out.
If only.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. She's living the dream.
Gonna get a rude awakening right around 5.
I know.
You expect me to do stuff?
No, I told my niece once that school was basically 20 more years of her life, and the look on her face was horror, anger, confusion. Like she realized how long she'd have to do this. Poor thing.
I think live video stream is going to get bigger. I think with more 4G LTE companies coming out there, especially with the 5G network coming out there, and more companies deciding to either go true unlimited just to get customers, or that the technology is getting more efficient. So I think they're hopefully remove a lot of the data caps that people have now. Those really ridiculous ones, especially the data caps on landline, which is pointless. Screw you and your terabyte data cap. I know I don't come close to yours, but what if I did? And I could easily if I started streaming 4K to my house. Go screw yourself.
Or if you wanted to do any sort of business from your house.
Or do business for a house, or mine cryptocurrency, or run my Tor node. But I don't have a Tor node in my house.
That's one of those things where he says the truth, but then he realizes he shouldn't say it on air, so he fake covers it up.
How dare you? That doesn't happen. Hopefully the technology gets cheaper, more competition gets out there, and who knows? Especially with a lot of, I like the radio platform inside the Teslas where it's just this massive screen, right? Where that would be easily to put something on there, and you can hit the self-driving on and be able to hit live video in a car and drive around. Now, if some people's I thought Harry hates Teslas. I do hate Tesla cars, but I have reasons why I hate them. But that innovation there inside of there, that I appreciate. Everything else I hate a lot.
All right, we're just going to read this off the websites because this is getting ridiculous. I'm getting irritated.
Yeah, the big problems with Twitch and people doing because Twitch wants to control, which I don't blame them, the exclusive rights of everything you Twitch live for one time. It's written inside their terms of service, so if you use something like Restream or something like that, you actually technically are breaking the terms of service up when you're using Twitch, so they can cancel your account, which stinks. What else? So because they want exclusive rights, so so that's why I'm directing my thing straight into the Twitch stream. There's a YouTube camera going on, but this is an exclusive Twitch feed that's going straight to Twitch, and I'm talking straight directly to Twitch. And I get it because they want to control their platform and making sure people aren't streaming to 50 bazillion different sites. Of course, they don't have the manpower to enforce that rules that usually comes, which most companies don't have the manpower to enforce most of its terms of service. They use snitches. You know who you are, dirty snitches. But yeah, but a lot of different things will come more Twitchified and going through that, and more different things But certain things like Abdul, he live streams all the time when he does different services, stuff like that. But since majority of his audience is boomers, he's fine with doing on Facebook. Now, if he noticed that most of his audience started becoming younger and younger, someone like Abdul would be better on Twitch doing an IRL stream. He would probably get more because of the fact that he goes everywhere. Especially all the places he goes down to Indianapolis and meets people. He'd be probably better but more set up for Twitch.
Yeah, destination streaming is definitely one of Twitch's strong points.
Of course, Twitch would probably go to his head because they would directly go to him. It would be all, oh man, let's not. No one mention Twitch to Abdul.
I'm going to make sure to mention it to Abdul next time I see him.
No, to go to his head.
Everything goes to his head.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We've got to be able to. I know we've got one good boomer. Just one.
People loved that Joe episode.
It's one good boomer. Okay, one. I meant
He's the only one.
good boomer. It's not like the rest of them boomers. But yeah, we got to bleed those. We the millennials, Gen Zs, and the Gen Xers. We've got to bleed these boomers dry and take their money. Like, if you come across a boomer who is selling their house for an exorbitant amount because they want to sell their house here in India and move down to Florida and retire, and because they didn't save any money because they blew all their money on Quaaludes in the 80s and cocaine and women, tell them to screw that, lowball the crap out of them. My house is $425,000. Awesome. Here's $250K. This thing is worth that. Screw you. Pay the taxes on it. You know, and wait for that. Bleed them dry. Hope their house foreclosure and buy it on auction. Don't buy these boomer. Don't buy anything from a boomer at full price. Haggle them down to at least half price.
Hilarious. All right. Well, we should live stream only to our paying customers, Harry.
Are the show's getting ready to start?
Getting ready to start. I'm almost ready.
All right. Well, we're getting ready to go. I'm sorry, Twitch people. Once I figure out how to do Twitch only to the subscriber to the Twitch channel, maybe I'll keep you guys on. But bye,
Bye, baby.
Everybody. Bye. Can I say bye to Twitch? Can you say bye to Twitch people?
Love you.
All right, I'm probably going to get banned from Xfinity because of that.
Well, all I did was try to tongue kiss them. Okay, 100. Yeah, we got Jacob Klingensmith. I hope I said that right.
I'm at
He's new. Eric Neff. You know one good boomer.
Mm-hmm.
Joshua Sexton just joined. No, Joshua Sexton didn't just join. I'm wrong. All right, we are live. Okay. Close this. Man, it sounds good now that I've kind of tweaked everything.
Does it?
Yeah, it sounds really good.
Can't wait till we get our studio and I get my desk set up and I make sure no one moves my microphone every time they come here.
All right.
I'm at one good boomer. That's the song that's in my head is from the Uncle Ruckus when he was singing country song when he met racist was singing I met one good there's a hard R N-word there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was kind of funny because the crowd kept going like, "There's no such thing."
Sign in.
You're not the racist I thought you was. So my Dude, like honestly, like researching a lot of this stuff about the whole gun debate and all this gun crap, like blew my mind. A lot of it blew my mind, and when it really comes down to it, and I'll try to mention this when the show starts, is that the simple fact that gun owners are technically a minority in this country.
Technically, yeah.
And it's the majority is beating on them. That's the thing. This is a ridiculous thing. And somebody's like, why can't we get this? Because they're a minority and their rights are being trampled on.
Though it is a little bit harder to argue that because, you know, children under 18 mostly can't be gun owners because...
What child under 18 can afford a gun besides a High Point? Maybe a High Point.
I don't know.
That's the other thing. When they kept talking about all these kids getting guns, I'm like, shoot, the cheapest gun I have is $400.
Right. And quite frankly, up until the age of 23 or 24, I wanted a video game console a lot more than I ever wanted a gun.
Oh, hell yes. You know, if I had $400, I'd about a console.
Exactly. Or a new graphics card now that I'm PC.
Yeah. New graphics card, some sport appeal, clothes. You know, if your kid can make $400 easily and get a gun, you probably need to charge that kid rent. Charge him rent. Or get a car. Shoot, $400. Sure, that would have been like a, you know, I could have bought car parts, tools, car insurance.
Both my roommate and I have gotten a car for less than $50 before.
Wait, did you just say you got a car for less than $50?
Yeah. From family, friends, and
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I was like,
When I reported to the state
Bro.
of Indiana, it's always like, less than $50.
See, when Justin told them that, they basically said, no, it's worth, and charged him the tax based on that.
Let's see.
Those
Almost
bastards. Yeah, they like to do crap like that sometimes.
Yeah.
It's easier if it's like some old 30-year-old car. It's like, yeah, the thing was like $100.
Yeah. Well, frankly, they should have looked at it and been like, yeah, okay, well, here's your money back.
We owe you money.
We owe you money. That's worth negative.
I'm still ticked off about the tax I have to pay on my RX-8 because of the simple fact that I can't drive it because the roads are bad, but I still have to pay the tax to plate the damn car. I can't, and when I do get to drive it on the road, I pay extra because I get 13 miles to the gallon, but I can't drive it anywhere because the roads are too bad and my car's too low to the freaking ground. So I end up driving like this older car that's cheaper to drive on the road, which its big sticky tires probably tear up the road more.
All right, you kids ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Welcome to We Are Libertarians. I'm your host, Chris Spangle. We bring you all of the irreverence modern politics deserves while putting people before political parties. We examine current events from a libertarian perspective with the goal of leaving you better informed. Please be sure to rate and review us on iTunes, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on Patreon at WeAreLibertarians.com. In exchange for supporting our program, we give you all kinds of bonus content and free stuff, including 30 minutes that we just recorded right before the show. As I was getting some prep stuff done, Harry basically did a show with our guest, and so you can hear all that. So you get all kinds of bonus content. There's going to be several hours of bonus content this week that's going to be posted in there. So on a private RSS feed that you get on Patreon. So subscribe now, $5, $10, and you get access to our community, our private community, very exclusive. Very, very fun. Sometimes we go in there and talk about other listeners in the other group. We have one group with 1,400 people, and we have one group that is the Patreon subscribers. And sometimes somebody will go in there like today and go, did you see that guy in that post? So it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So $10 a month, $25, I'll send you a poster. $100, you get to come on the show. So, and we want to thank outright Brandon Luke, Christy Avery, Jason Doolittle, and Craig DaCosta for being $100 a month subscribers. This show is crowdsourced, so you can send us news with the hashtag WALNews or in our Facebook group and our Discord channel, all available at WeAreLibertarians.com. We are always taking your questions and comments via email at editor@WeAreLibertarians.com. Please be warned that this show is raw, unedited, and authentic, so the language is sometimes strong and offensive. With me on Tuesdays, as always, is Harry Price. Harry, how are you?
Going good. Finished. I did a massive bunch of tests last week. Got a new certification. Got my ITIL certification.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Now I'm going to be working on my CIW website associate certification, which sucks for me because I don't do website design. So
I don't know what any of that meant, but I'm glad. I appreciate your efforts. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Also here is Paul Copeland. Paul, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Excellent. Nice to have you. You've been a long-time listener, long-time We Are Libertarians friend.
Yeah, it's been quite a few years.
Yeah, so get close to that mic for me. You can pull it towards you.
I will do that.
You're going to have to speak with more energy, too.
All right, yeah.
So, like I said, Paul's been a long-time friend, and he was at Liberty and Chill, our Friday night get-together where fans of We Are Libertarians get together every Friday night in Indianapolis at Liberty and Chill here in town. And we just get together and talk and chit-chat, and Paul was there last week, and I said, bring Paul with you, because we're going to talk guns, and we're going to do a different Tuesday show than normal. It's going to be a little more relaxed, and we're going to talk about all the gun stuff. Excuse me. But Paul was like, well, I brought money for you. I was like, oh, well, bring him Tuesday with you then, because I couldn't be there last Friday. Many of you have sent in emails saying you want to do Liberty and Chill in your area. I've forwarded those on to Harry. I don't know that we've gotten ourselves organized on that, but we've gotten your emails. They're saved. We're going to get back to you.
Yeah, we're definitely working on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a couple housekeeping things. I want to thank not only our Patreon subscribers. So, one of the things that I want to do is travel a lot this year. I'm getting ready this weekend to go to LibertyCon for Students for Liberty in Washington, D.C. So I leave. Ow! I just bit my tongue. Leave Friday, come back Sunday. Also, just want you to know that I have a security camera here in the house that will be recording all my stuff. So I'll be gone this weekend covering LibertyCon, and very excited to do that. I want to go to PorkFest. I want to go to the National Libertarian Convention. I also have to go to my brother's wedding in Vegas in May, so I've got a lot of traveling I want to do. And the Patreon subscribers make that possible. I got invited to Radio Row at this convention, and it was just a no-brainer, and I was able to say yes because of our Patreon subscribers. And I want to thank you guys. Also, a special thanks to Christy Avery, Joey Tarner, Nick Economopoulos, and Craig DaCosta for their donations on our PayPal, above and beyond their Patreon donations, to help offset the cost. Because I spent a few $100s of materials and airline tickets and hotels and all that stuff. So. Very excited. If you're going to be there this weekend, make sure to get in the Facebook group and send me a message on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Let's meet up. So I'll be around Friday night, nothing to do, and looking forward to meeting everybody this weekend and interviewing some folks. And a lot of next week we'll be recapping what exactly happens at LibertyCon, some of the interviews that I'm hoping to get with some big Liberty names, and just talking to regular libertarians and students and what is libertarianism like for the next generation. I have some hunches, but I'm interested to go and talk to a lot of the Gen Z and see what they're thinking, and seeing some other libertarian folks. So very excited for this coming weekend and looking forward. Make sure you stay tuned to all of our social, which you can find at weareLibertarians.com, and I will be posting a lot. And, hey, if you want to throw in an extra few bucks to help offset the cost, love for you to do that. At the bottom of the page at weareLibertarians.com is the PayPal link. Would be greatly appreciated, because it's expensive to go to this stuff, as many of you know, and on top of what it costs to run We Are Libertarians. And so if you get something out of this show, there's 7,000 people that listen to this show, and we're growing by 1,000 a month. That's a lot of people. And we have 100 people that keep the lights on. So if everybody just went and gave $1 or $5 a month, if you get something out of this show, please contribute, because we're able to take that money and put it into resources. So right now I've got a mobile app for Android and Apple that I just haven't deployed yet because I haven't had the extra cash to buy the iTunes and the iTunes and Google gatekeeping fees. So we're always thankful when you share, but if you want to take that next step and really help us grow and do more stuff and cover things in a better way and give you a better perspective about what's happening, then please become a Patreon subscriber at wearelibertarians.com. It really does help us out a lot, and I thank you for that. So yeah, if you get something out of this and you'd miss it if it were gone, if this show means something to you, then please, $1 a month, $5 a month, whatever you can budget in. All that tax return money, that you're saving, the theft return that you're getting from the Trump tax cuts.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to put some of that towards growing libertarianism. So we get so many great letters about people from around the world who are becoming libertarians because of this show. And we're making a real impact here. So, I mean, if you've stopped giving to the Libertarian National Party in the last year, give it to We Are Libertarians. We're much more effective. So a lot to talk about tonight. I want to thank you guys so much, because traveling as press for We Are Libertarians for the first time is a milestone for me and very exciting. And I thank you guys for making it possible. So we're going to have a conversation. I've composed a list of questions that I've seen throughout the gun debate as I've watched all of this stuff and had conversations over the last couple podcasts about it. We didn't do it last Tuesday because Harry and I talked on the phone, and there's still a lot that was so fresh.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of stuff developing, and I just didn't know what I wanted to say yet. and I still don't know that I know what I want to say around some of this because so much of this is troubling. But you know, I think it was good to kind of wait a week to have a conversation about some of this stuff. And I put together a group of questions. You know, we always say, hey, take some time after one of these tragedies. Just take some time before you rush to the computer or the phone and start giving your opinion on these national tragedies. Like your opinion on guns can wait, you know, a day, 2 days, whatever. And sometimes it's good to wait, although none of us ever do that because we see an argument and we want to refute it. But if you just give it a second and let some of the facts come out, they come out in a way that shape what we should be talking about. And I've never seen a case, I haven't seen one of these shootings with this much vitriol and this much debate around it. The Vegas shooting didn't really have a lot of gun debate. I mean, it was like a couple days of your friend posting about gun rights and gun taking away the Second Amendment and all that stuff. But this has just been a 2-week slog of arguments. And it hasn't even really been around about the AR-15 for me. What it's really been about is just the failure of government to keep people protected. And it's been every single day there is another failure from the law enforcement agencies, federal, state, and local, that are just stunning.
Yeah. As the timeline keeps developing and you're coming out and they're finding out more and more evidence every day, like it's still not even like a concrete timeline yet.
Right.
You know, it's almost been 2 weeks since the shooting, and they still don't have a concrete timeline of this is what happened. You know, this is what happened at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and stuff like that. They're still trying to put that together and find out who was on the scene when, and when was they in the scene. What did they have while they were on the scene? What evidence did they collect? What things were said? They are still to this day are still trying to get that all piece together. And granted, there's a lot of people involved in this, so that is going to happen. It's an investigation. That's what happens in a majority of these investigations. That's why the 9/11 convention took so long to produce a report, because there's a lot of different people that were involved in an incident. So it takes a while to put these stuff together.
Right.
Yeah. Even if they're just listing the failures of the local sheriff's department, that's going to take some time to track down all that paperwork, who said what to them when about this guy.
Yeah. So let me give you some of the facts. I'm pulling a lot of this from the Daily Wire, which is a conservative website. The Ben Shapiro Show and the Daily Wire have been excellent on kind of making a consistent case for gun rights advocates, and very concise, succinct, and I'll put all these links in the show notes. So just to give you some of the facts, which, you know, here's the thing, like, it is coming from the Daily Wire, but they're linking to, like, this particular article, the Sun Sentinel. They're kind of showing you what's been going on.
Citing sources.
Citing sources is a good way to put that, yes. And, you know, so they bring up in, I guess in Fort Lauderdale, in January of 2017, there was a shooting at the Fort Lauderdale airport, and it came out that where 5 people died in this, 6 were wounded, and the Broward County Sheriff's Office later admitted that they failed to seize control and failed to set up a unified command structure. Although it took 90 seconds for sheriff deputies to capture the lone gunman, roughly 90 minutes later, false rumors of gunfire prompted a stampede. So they didn't have control of the situation then. And there weren't any improvements to the Broward County Sheriff's Department at that time. And this is the same sheriff who, although none of us knew it at the time, if you watch the Jake Tapper interview this past weekend, where Jake Tapper really grills him and goes after him, and he basically says, you know, my leadership has been amazing.
Right, yeah, amazingly ineffective.
Amazingly ineffective. He goes on the CNN town hall and basically calls Dana Lash a murderer because she supports the NRA, and he's deeply political in this entire situation. But then when Jake Tapper asks, "Did you know about the failures of your department to protect the school?" he said, "I can't remember," which, so he's really a garbage. So let's kind of jump back to that interview this past Sunday where Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel described, this is from Reason Magazine, described his own leadership as amazing, refused to resign from office, and attempted to pin the blame for law enforcement's myriad failures before and after the shootings. So when asked whether a more competent sheriff's office could have prevented the horrific tragedy that claimed the lives of 17 people, Israel said, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, O.J. Simpson would still be in the record books.
Wow.
Tapper countered it with, "I don't know what that means." At this point, we have no reason to believe anyone acted incorrectly or correctly. So this is on the 25th. This is 2 days ago. This is Monday when this comes out.
Which is fair. The investigations are still
Right.
going on.
So I just thought that was an incredibly callous thing. Like, could you have done a better job? If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, O.J. Simpson would still be in the record books. How about, I am deeply grieved at the 17 people that lost their lives, and if my police department could have done anything differently, we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to fix those problems. We're going to make sure that the next tragedy that happens here, I'm going to make sure that under my leadership, we never lose another. I mean, this Fort Lauderdale shooting, this airport shooting, clearly they didn't learn anything based on the articles that we're about to read to you to bring you up to speed on the timeline.
Well, and it just goes to showcase he's one of those leaders that got the position not through respect or just being from the years. He got it from another position.
Right.
He wasn't a leader that, got it just because he's been through the ranks and people looked up to him.
Right.
But most leaders and most people, even good, if people's like that good manager that or somebody that just are good people in good leadership, they view every mistake that was done under them as their own faults. Something that they either didn't give their people working under them the correct resources, the correct training, and they feel that on themselves and wants to correct that.
Right.
Instead of, nope, it's them under me. It is not me. I am awesome. I am perfect. They suck.
Right.
Which is that's everyone's hateful manager that they've ever had when they were 16 working at some Burger King or McDonald's.
Yeah, no. And I think one of the big problems here is that in a lot of areas, sheriff is a partisan position. You are a Republican sheriff. You are a Democrat sheriff. There are plenty of photos with this particular Sheriff Israel and Hillary Clinton when she was campaigning, other Democratic leaders, but, you shouldn't get a law enforcement position based upon the letter next to your name.
Yeah.
Right.
And hopefully he doesn't have any emails.
Broward County is very Democratic.
Yeah.
So it comes out that Scott Peterson, the school resource officer, is outside and essentially didn't go in. And he's been called the coward of Broward County. And he was connected to the sheriff's department and resigned after it came out that he was there, he was armed, and he did nothing. Now Scott Peterson, which terrible name to have, apparently. So he released a statement yesterday, basically saying his lawyer Joseph DeRuzio. This is from Sky News. So Trump came out and said the officers who were there weren't exactly Medal of Honor winners, and then went on to say that Donald Trump, had he been there, he would have run in even if he had been unarmed to stop this school shooting.
Yeah. How many red-blooded men would have said that themselves?
Right.
That's the other thing. I hated all these people making fun of that comment, but no. How many of you guys would have sat there this thing? Most guys say that. Though. Most guys, and if they didn't say it out loud in front of a microphone, they're thinking it.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But would he?
Cadet Bone Spurs wouldn't have run in.
Right.
That's for sure.
Well, he would have sent a security detail.
Right.
Yeah. No. Everybody's a lot braver until there's actual gunfire.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in a statement, his lawyer said it was patently untrue that Mr. Peterson failed to meet standards or that he acted with cowardice during the attack, which saw 17 people murdered. He continued, "Let there be no mistake, Mr. Peterson wishes that he could have prevented the untimely passing of the 17 victims on that day, and his heart goes out to the families of the victims in their time of need." He resigned from his post and said the sheriff's account of Mr. Peterson's actions that day was a gross oversimplification. Mr. Peterson and a security officer ran to the scene when they were alerted to the shooting, which was reported as firecrackers being set off near a building, according to the officer's statement. He then heard gunshots, but believed that those gunshots were originating from outside the buildings. The officer took up a tactical position between the two nearby buildings while alerting dispatchers and initiating a code red lockdown. The statement said radio transmissions indicated that there was a gunshot victim in the area of the football field, adding to Mr. Peterson's belief that the shooting was taking place outside. Follows Mr. Trump's comments to governors at the White House. He said, "You don't know until you're tested, but I really think I'd have run in there even if I didn't have a weapon. And I think most of the people in this room would have done that." So, perfectly logical explanation from Scott Peterson, the school resource officer. I thought it was outside. My radio transmissions reflected that. I was unaware. And in a school shooting, I mean, you're not going to be able to get it 100% right. I mean, I know I shouldn't defend this guy, but when you hear his explanation, it's a valid explanation.
Well, considering the sheriff is, his explanations are like crap, and it seemed like he was very quick to throw someone underneath him under the bus at a press conference.
Right.
The other thing with it is that this guy said it, going to the press conference, he had enough time in to resign/retire. So this guy obviously is not, he's not some spry 25-year-old, that's been doing sit-ups and push-ups all day.
Right.
He's a school resource officer, so most of the time he's dealing with rowdy kids, suspension kids, or or having to deal with, kids that get into fights and have to, settle assault cases there. So he's not, he's not some combat cop out there, And when it comes down to it, if he was outside having to deal with firecrackers because he thought he heard firecrackers going off,
right?
If they start hearing gunshots, right? How many people would keep walking around with their head walking out like, "Hey, what's going on over here?" Now, granted, most white people probably would, going towards the gunshots, That's
right.
A funny joke. Laugh at that. That's a joke. You're supposed to laugh. Make with the laugh. But because it would echo. You couldn't tell this situation, especially if there's multiple buildings, there's things going on. It would echo. And I don't know about you, but if I heard gunshots, I'm not walking around. I'm dropping behind something solid that I can get my hands on.
Absolutely.
Right.
No,
and it definitely depends on the environment. Having not been there myself, I would have to trust his assessment of the acoustics of the environment there. It could have been quite easy to be unsure where the shots were coming from.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you would I was going to say, and the thing is, okay, let's say he's a school resource officer. What type of gun this guy's probably handling? It's the standard, probably, Glock 17?
Right.
Mine's a Glock 22, which I shoot the 40 cal S&W out of my Glock.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a bigger bullet than that 9mm that he has, that he's walking around with.
Don't you even start with the stopping power myths.
It's not a stopping power myth. I'm just saying,
Okay, so you're familiar with weapons, so...
The stopping power, man. Yeah.
Stopping power.
It's got the stopping power.
So gun control advocates were arguing that a mere Glock, a mere pistol, could not have taken on an AR-15 because of the shooting speed of the bullets.
It's not through speed. No, it wouldn't be speed.
I don't remember what they're
They're
basically
they did debate speed. It is
right. That's what I read, is that it goes, I mean, obviously a long rifle. Even I know that a long rifle and an AR-15, the way that they fire, they're more aggressive. They do more damage. That's why am I wrong?
It depends entirely upon the firearm itself. The rifle I could have brought today would be a 223, which is going to be a much narrower bullet. It's going to be traveling faster, but it has less mass. So when it impacts, it would probably do less damage than the hollow points that he has in his magazine right there.
Okay. So is it a valid argument that a single police officer with a Glock pistol, standard issue police department pistol, going in to take on somebody with an AR-15, that they would be at such a disadvantage that it's not even worth trying?
No.
Why?
Two reasons. One, inside of a school building, you guys went to much larger schools than I did. There is not a distance where the difference in bullet velocity is going to make a difference at all. And two, in every single mass shooting event that I can think of off the top of my head, when confronted with an armed bystander or police officer, the shooter ends up taking their own life or laying down and accepting whatever comes to them.
Correct. But yes, he is also correct. Majority of them do they just stop or like, and it's kind of weird to watch them. Like you find the live leak video of them just turning the gun on themselves instantly. Like the guy, like there's somebody. I think there's that video of the guy on the mall. He misses 3 times, shoots over the guy's head, but the guy turns the gun on himself and kills himself.
Right.
Instantly.
I hadn't even thought of that.
It was like wow.
Right.
So like it goes to that. It's like some of these mass shooters are they just suicide by cop people? But the other thing with it when it comes down. Yeah, he's right because unless you have a long distance, the rifle and the handgun, it's not too much of a difference there. And when it comes to like I say, trying to use like the lockers and stuff for cover, nope. 9mm 40 SW probably will go through lockers like it's nothing.
Yeah, that sheet metal is a tenth of an inch thick, maybe. The only difference he could have is like when it comes down to magazine capacity, but this isn't the movies, and the guy's not going to stand there in the middle and just ram off 100 bullets, and you can one up and John Woo him while he's reloading. That's another myth that I freaking hate. Like we've got to limit the magazine capacity. Why? Because you think someone's going to reload and you're going to walk up there and John Woo the gun out of their hands? Heck no, you're going to get shot in the face.
Right.
Because like even if you think they're reloading, what if it's a jam? They're just clearing a jam. Once they clear the jam, they're going to start shooting again, and you just got shot in the chest.
Okay. Perfectly reasonable and valid explanations.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, like with he would also have an advantage because the rifle being a long rifle, him peeping around a corner, he'd also have an advantage there for the simple fact that rifle is going to stick out, and basically he would how he's telegraphing the corners. And granted, I don't think this guy, like, unless he plays like tons of Rainbow Six and Call of Duty, right? It's how he's going to go around the corner.
Yeah, even then, video games are not real life, and you're going to behave so differently.
Right. Yeah, and he's shaking. The gun is the AR-15 is easy to shoot, but still, it's not. He's not gonna. It's not as comfortable and as movable as the Glock. The guy with a Glock would probably be easy to take cover, take concealment somewhere,
right?
Because he has got a smaller weapon.
Theoretically, and he would go in a tactical manner. He would not run straight down the middle of the hallway, going, "All right, your weapon against mine, draw." Like
right. Yeah, and the other thing
there'd be some strategery to it.
Yes. Yeah. The other strategery thing to it is that if, without being confronted, he's walking around unmolested. So he's not thinking about having to take cover, going through doors. He's not hearing that. The moment he probably heard going back into putting himself in a two-way gun range,
right,
he would probably stop and just get to cover, like Paul said. Like he would, like, because he's now is being shot at. Whether those shots are ineffective, he's not going to be able to walk around like he was.
Right.
It's, or like, and we don't even know how he's walking out. They haven't released it. We have no video from inside yet, and they haven't released the reports of how he was walking around. So, but I'm guessing walking around unmolested, just standing straight up and walking around.
All right, so late last week, we learned that the resource officer was outside and did nothing. Now we've heard his explanation. So then we learned on February 23rd, later in the day, that there were 3 other officers that made no attempt. Now this is from Reason.com. When the Coral Springs police officers arrived on the scene, they discovered several officers who had their pistols drawn, were behind their vehicles, and not one of them had gone into the school, according to a CNN report. Coral Springs officers were stunned and upset to discover that no one else in law enforcement had dared to take on the shooter. This is news. Now, these were Broward County Sheriff's deputies that were outside the school, and then the Coral Springs city police showed up, and they were dismayed that there were police officers outside and not in the school. This news isn't exactly surprising, given that what we already knew about the Broward County Sheriff, Scott Israel, where he had suspended 2 other officers in addition to Peterson, who had resigned for their conduct during the mass shooting. Perhaps Israel is not directly responsible for his officers' behavior, though there are other questions he should answer about the Broward County's myriad failures in preventing the massacre, which we will bring up in a moment. Now, To their part, let me just give their explanation for what happened. It came out today. It was leaked by some of those officers. A Parkland first responder claims he was told to stand down during crucial moments following the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, hypothesizing that he could have saved lives if he were allowed inside the building at the time. The man, described as a seasoned emergency medical responder by WSVN Miami News 7 reporter Brian Entwin, who interviewed him Saturday night, asked to remain anonymous in fear that he might be fired for speaking out. 100% chance, bruh. This guy will absolutely fire you, and I'll explain why. Everything I was trained on mass casualty events says they did the wrong thing, the first responder said. You don't wait for the scene to be cleared. You go in immediately armed, retrieve the victims. You can't leave the victims lying there. The first responder said he was asking officials to go inside the school, but was told not to enter. We were asking to go in, asking the scene commander to go in. Why are we all standing around? Why are we not having patients to treat? Why are we not going into the building and retrieving these kids? The response every time was law enforcement did not clear the scene and would not allow the medical personnel to go in. I would hypothesize I could have saved lives. I can't say for sure, adding, I would have risked my life to go in. I was eager to. He was frustrated the entire time he was there. Rapid evacuation of the wounded. All they had to do was drag them out of the building and we could have started medical care. He said, though, authorities might have made a decision, though they thought was correct at the time. He disagrees. I don't think it was the right one. They should have been more aggressive about getting the victims out. So that is what Brian ENTIN posted on Twitter on a statement. Now, Laura Ingraham on Fox News last night revealed an exclusive that officers were told to stand down because they were not wearing body cameras. She said, Broward County Sheriff's deputies were supposedly told to not enter Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School unless they had body cameras on, which they did not have. Ingram also revealed that police lost radio transmissions during the shooting, which also happened at the mass shooting at Fort Lauderdale Airport shooting last year, which was also in Broward County. So let me recap that in case that didn't make sense. The radio transmissions during the shooting at the school and at the airport shooting that we talked about earlier seemed to go missing. They just deleted the data, essentially. So, nice. Yeah.
It's awful. So possibly things were said that that aren't supposed to be heard. Or they legitimately had issues, and they never once corrected them because somebody's cousin, brother, uncle, somebody is doing their tech support, and they screwed it up.
Now, listen, somebody, I'm going to actually, just because it is Laura Ingraham and Fox News, I'm going to play the actual clip from Laura's show last night so you can hear it for yourself, because I want you to evaluate the information as it came out of her mouth. This is what we know about it. And let's, we're skeptical of all media. But Fox News, for whatever reason, gets as much skepticism, if not more, than CNN.
Oh, yeah.
So let's play this clip from Laura Ingram's show. Hold on while it loads here.
Department are telling us that near the Broward County Sheriff's Department are telling us that the deputies who arrived at the scene of the shooting were told not to enter the school unless their body cameras were turned on. And then we found out that the deputies did not have body cameras, so they did not enter or enter the building or engage the shooter. So curiously, police also lost radio communications during the Parkland shooting. And our source claims that radio communication also went dead during the Fort Lauderdale Airport shooting in 2017 that he also got a lot of criticism for. So I want to start with you, Representative Fine. Your reaction to this news that the deputies were told not to enter the building without body cams, which they lacked at the time. Your reaction?
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for having me on. Look, the more we learn about this situation, the more obvious it is that Sheriff Israel needs to resign or be removed immediately. That's why I signed that letter, and that's why the Florida House is moving this week to subpoena all records of Sheriff Israel, and we're going to be subpoenaing him and making him come up to Tallahassee to explain himself. What happened is a disgrace.
Now, Governor Rick Scott can fire him. He has the authority to fire him, and he has ordered an investigation, as you just heard. and he wants to clear everything, get all the information out, because he doesn't want to look like it's partisan.
Right.
But there is an investigation. So this report came out today, also from Laura Ingram. Just a few hours ago, the Ingram Angle received copies of internal emails from a source close to Broward County Sheriff's Office, which has since been confirmed by a second source. It urges all staff members to vigorously support Sheriff Israel. Which, okay. Yeah, he's really something.
Yeah, he's a piece of work.
Yeah. Now,
Not the word I'd choose.
Yeah, bless his heart. Yeah, but it makes sense if those if those cops were coming in from out of their districts, they probably assumed that someone took chain of command, and so they didn't want to interact and go inside. Just like if anyone, let's say the Cajun Navy, showed up to go after these guys,
right?
If they saw someone with a chain of command, they probably should back off and just wait for it. So, like I said, we'll get to find out more information about that as that comes out. If when those records finally get to come out, then with the whole body cam thing, it makes you wonder what else has happened in this county that they don't like interacting with people without their body cams on. What else has happened?
Right.
Or it's just some other PR or some other thing of policy that was put into the policy that was it's junk code.
Right. Well, the thing is, I don't care about body cameras. You have lives to save.
Yeah.
This is an egregious, following the letter of the policy in a crisis like this is how you have more people die. When you're so worried about, oh, well, we need footage of this in case something bad happens. No. There are kids bleeding in that building. Get in there.
Right. Yeah. And it goes to show you, when it comes to cops follow orders. They follow orders. There's the orders they were given, so they follow the orders.
Well, not to the cops follow the orders. Well, in a situation like that, when you have a violent, crazy situation in any event where you have a traumatic situation, you've got to be well coordinated.
Correct. Yeah, that too.
And so you've got to follow orders. That's why you have a chain of command. And so if these officers are being told don't go in, they're going, well, there's got to be another reason than body cameras, so let's not go in, right? I mean, but then there's also that's bullshit. Let's go in.
Right. And then it's another thing, and that's leaked information. We could find out later that there's other information that they had good report that there's multiple shooting, and they didn't want to send a team of 4 or 5 in and get flanked because they think it was just one shooter or 2 shooters. They don't know. It could be a team of 6 inside there. Now, granted, that sounds ridiculous, but if that's the report they've got, they don't want to send people into a killing field.
Right.
Because that's bad PR. That's bad PR too. You just lost more lives.
Right.
And supplied the shooters inside with more ammunition and guns.
Yeah. Someone says a .223 will go through bulletproof vests. They just wanted to add that to
Level 1 bulletproof vest, not if you have the plate. If you have a metal plate, it'll stop it.
And for a county of Ballard size, I really doubt that they're just using soft vests.
Yeah, the soft level 1 vest.
Especially if they're showing up to an active shooter situation, they've taken the time to throw on their plates.
Yeah. Because some cops do have the plates inside their car, depending on the county.
Well, now it's making me question it because this is apparently a county that doesn't have body cameras. What else don't they have?
Right, yeah, that's true, too. He's buying other things.
All right, so I know...
Yeah, the MRAP.
I know that it seems like I'm not killing it on sourcing tonight, but I promise you I am, because everything that I'm reading to you is backed up. It's all fact. You can look it up. Double-check me. I know libertarians love to fact-check. And so this next one, the first people to report this were the Daily Mail. So I want to give them credit for being first because I've now heard the tapes of what I'm about to read you.
Okay.
It wasn't 39 times that the shooter had been. We'd heard that 39 times people had called the local police department. And the Broward County Sheriff's Department released a very angry statement about this.
Okay.
It was 23 times. Get your facts straight.
Oh.
You're propagating fake news. Now, I listened to The Daily, which is the New York Times podcast, and The Daily for February 2017, for February 27th, 2018, if you're listening far in the future, actually played the tapes of a specific incident regarding regarding the shooter. Thank you. Thank you for keeping me honest here. I was just literally reading his name, and it almost came out. The 19-year-old shooter obviously is somebody who was really struggling with a lot of stuff, and he called the police on himself. The shooter actually called 911 to report himself because he was struggling. We read from the Daily Mail. Again, this is all sourced and accurate. I promise you I double-checked it because it is the Daily Mail. Yep. I hate that game where, like, this is from Fox News, I don't believe it. Well, it's not, like, examine the piece of content itself and decide if that piece of information is overtly biased, if the facts are wrong, if there's misstatements. Like, use your critical thinking. Like, don't just throw stuff out because of the source. So anyways, the reason I'm reading this article is because it has the best recap of everything that happened. So I'm trying to get you the best information. So the 19-year-old shooter called authorities just after Thanksgiving saying he had been in a fight and was struggling with the death of his mother. The thing is, I lost my mother a couple weeks ago, so like I'm dealing with a bunch of things right now, he told police. On January 5th, just a month before the shooting, a woman who knew Cruz called the FBI tip line and said, "I know he is going to explode." She said her biggest fear was that he might resort to entering a school and just start, quote, shooting up the place. 40 days later, he opened fire at, it's in the article, I didn't self-edit, opened fire at the high school in Parkland, Florida, killing 17 people, injuring 14 others, 5 with life-threatening injuries. 3 months before the deadly shooting, a friend dialed 911 concerned about the shooter and his weapons. "I need someone here because I'm afraid he comes back and he has a lot of weapons," the friend said. Turns out that friend, the New York Times reported, was the person that took him in. So his mother died around Thanksgiving, and then a family friend took him in, and there was a son about his age living in the household, and they got into a fight one day over like something completely silly, like eggs that were cooked wrong or whatever. Yeah. And he went ballistic, and he stormed out and said, "I'm going to buy another gun," and went down to Dick's Sporting Goods, and they were afraid that he was going to come back, and so they called 911 and said, "We've got this situation here. He's going to buy a gun." All he talks about is weapons. Mm-hmm. And then that's when Cruz called in that's when the shooter called in and said, "I'm struggling," and the police officers, because of dispatch, had connected the dots here, got everybody involved. They met the shooter and the son and the mother at a park, had a conversation, everything seemed fine. Now here's the thing. As the New York Times Daily podcast points out, there wasn't anything that the police could have done in this situation. He was a depressed teenager. They couldn't arrest him on any crime. He had the guns legally. They couldn't have, I mean, really just kind of think about it. I know we want to go, well, we need somebody to blame for this. Right. We blame the shooter, but if you rewind the tape back to this period of time and you're the police officer and all the context that you have is just the information that you have these 2 911 calls, they're written out on your computer, and you have a conversation with the shooter and these people, they hug it out, you know, the kid seems a little odd, but there's nothing you could, like, your job is spent around the oddest 10% of the population, and so you're on to the next call. So these 23 different contacts with the shooter, in every case, the police officers their job is not to sit there and diagnose his mental illness. Their job is to make sure that peace is kept in that immediate moment. And if there is a law being broken, there never was a law being broken. He was just odd or violent in that moment, or those dots were never connected. Like the Instagram that he had where he was killing cats wasn't a relevant piece of information that the police officers had in that moment. And so we look back and we see all the evidence laid out, and we look at this pattern and we go, this was so clear, why didn't everybody see it? Well, it's harder when you have these disparate agencies. And we're going to talk about some of those agencies as we go through this article, giving you more information. So on November 29th, family friend Roxanne, who was looking after the shooter after his mother died in early November, told the dispatcher that Cruz already had about 8 guns that he kept at a friend's house. In the voice recording, he can be heard telling police all he cares about is his guns. In another call to police, she said it's not the first time he put a gun on somebody's head. She also said that he did that once to his mother. Did you have some? Oh, you were just fidgeting.
That's not a law. That's brandishing a weapon. That's threatening someone's life.
Absolutely.
So right there, that is the line.
Right.
You brandish a weapon without a good purpose, and that is assault.
Yeah. And since it's a family member, that's a domestic violence.
So, but the mother goes, I don't want to press charges.
So in so many cases nowadays, the police don't have that discretion to not press charges. If it were a man and a woman having a fight, there are many laws on the books now in different states, and I don't know about Florida's laws specifically, but, you could be arrested for a domestic violence dispute, which your wife chooses not to press charges, but they have no choice, no recourse, but to take somebody away.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's the Duluth domestic violence rule, and they have to arrest somebody. And in the majority of the cases, and if you're convicted of a domestic violence case, they will take your guns, and they may even take them in the meantime.
Right.
Or they have the ability to. Like there's that one law here in Indiana that was signed back in 2004, which I'm not that total of agreement for, but they would have just took that person's guns.
Right.
Right. I know from something I don't want to get into that, even if they're not the person who they arrest and cart off's guns, they will take guns from the household, and it took a good long time for the person I know to get their guns back in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a few days later, an anonymous caller from Massachusetts told police that the shooter could be a school shooter in the making and that he was collecting guns and knives. Additionally, 2 years ago, authorities said they received information from the son of one of his neighbors that he planned to shoot up the school on Instagram. Despite multiple signs and calls to police and authorities, the Bureau failed to investigate Cruz, who had a desire to kill people, according to several sources. The FBI also received a tip from someone in Mississippi in September about a suspicious comment left on his YouTube channel by the shooter's name, who professed to be a professional school shooter. They claimed they did not have enough information to determine if school shooter's full name was a real person or a pseudonym, and the Bureau said it could not justify keeping a file on the tip. Is that a valid argument to you guys?
No,
because
me neither.
The FBI has so many resources to cross-reference with,
right?
With local law enforcement. There's no way that he didn't have a file somewhere where they could type it into NCIS or whatever the acronym for it is and pull something. There would have been a paper trail somewhere for a Mr. School shooter in the making.
Yeah. Right.
And it's Google. Google bends over backwards for federal government subpoenas.
Yeah,
they wouldn't have to even get a subpoena. They could have just wrote an email. Hey, we're worried about this comment right here.
Right.
Can you send us information on this person?
I'm more interested in the details on the Instagram where he allegedly planned to shoot up the school.
So I've got that for you. A tipster provided 4 Instagram accounts for him, which showed photos of sliced up animals and firearms he had collected. Cruz had used money from a life insurance policy after his mother's death to purchase the weaponry. All you see are guns, they said. 2 deputies have been placed on restricted duty in the sheriff's office. Let's see. mother, before she died, had called authorities numerous times over the past decade to report him. She had been hit with a plastic hose from a vacuum and once threw her against a wall after she took his Xbox away. He suffered from anger issues as well as ADHD and obsessive-compulsive disorder. He also allegedly shot a neighbor's chicken with a BB gun, cut himself, and possibly swallowed gasoline in a failed suicide attempt, which is unimaginable. Like, you think about actually drinking bleach or gasoline. Oof.
More domestic violence, more private property destruction,
Yeah.
Animal cruelty.
animal
Right.
cruelty, which
A huge red flag right there.
So let me
Yeah.
push.
Yeah. If he didn't shoot up this school, he's a serial killer.
Now let me push back, okay? Because I have the Snowden movie poster hanging on my wall. When it comes to, privacy and ending government surveillance. I always say that wrong.
Surveillance.
No one is as much of an advocate as I. So once you get into the business of keeping a file on every teenager that has guns on his Instagram, isn't that a slippery slope towards starting to put a file on people like the three of us? Because we have a podcast where we talk about this stuff.
I don't have
Well, first of all, that's really a bad equivalence there, because we're not saying guns. We're saying animal cruelty.
right.
Right.
This is like
Making threats.
But here's what you have to understand. Like, you're seeing it in hindsight. You're putting all this stuff together in a neat article and hearing it on a podcast, and you go, how did this get missed? But when you see out of these 20, let's say 30 incidents, okay, these 30 contacts with law enforcement, it's a different person each and every time, and they're going, I've checked on this situation, it looks fine, move along.
I don't see how you can check on a situation where he's posting cut up animals on Instagram and say, this looks fine, everything's fine here.
Yeah, that should have created as a file immediately.
Right.
Because the majority of serial killers, they're white middle-aged people, and in their their teenage years, they chopped up animals.
But isn't that profiling?
It's a profile that works, though.
Yeah.
No, we're not. This is like, you look at serial killers, and everyone that is been studied by the FBI, like, wets the bed and harms animals.
Right, which he did both. It's come out that he's wet the bed as well.
So yeah, if
I read or heard that somewhere, I don't have a source for that, but I have heard that in the
right,
conversation that.
and the anger issues, this.
What is it about your penis that when you're like a mass murderer, it just doesn't work at night and like you pee the bed? Like, I know that's a morose thought, but like, what? I don't know why that's a thing. Like,
It's probably
I get
psychological more than
yeah.
humiliation.
yeah.
Who knows?
You want to be
knows?
humiliated, yeah.
Not that. Who knows? I don't know that. I think a sociologist probably could tell us that, or it's just some type of hang up or chemical imbalance inside their brain, or just something that just makes them so relaxed inside their dreams that they don't have bladder control.
Right. It's just a weird, I hate to say this, but like the cutting up of animals, like you get that from an anger perspective, like that's a crazy thing to do, but like just peeing your bed.
Well, the cutting up of animals and stuff like that—that's a freaking, that's a freaking crime. If he just he's cutting up animals doing that's a freaking crime.
Shut up, Galt. He said he heard that he peed on the bed on a meme. It might have been, honestly. But, yeah, I mean, this kid did have a pattern, but you have to look at how real life works as opposed to the utopian vision of what we want. Do we want something disturbing on somebody's social media profile to trigger the government surveilling, watching them? Let's go with watching.
Well, see, then you've got the other thing is when you go on the flip side of that is you watch the FBI do other things is they record other things that they think as credible threats and put files on other people.
Sure.
Or even things that are less than that.
You
Not
mean
even-
like presidential candidates?
Correct, yeah.
Like, and I know that he said, they should have been watching school shooters instead of me, but which is ridiculous because it's two completely different, groups of officers. It's not like there's 5 people that work at the FBI, but it does show you like where's the priorities. I mean, and so this is the question that I really want the audience to think about, because these are the questions that if you were a lawmaker you would be faced with, because you have to look at how the system actually works and you have to balance privacy and security if you're a lawmaker. if you're a libertarian, you go, I don't want the government to exist. Well, then from an anarchist perspective, how do you keep people safe? How do you stop school shootings? Well, first of all, we wouldn't have public schools, but you still would have evil existing. And this kid is an evil person. He would still exist in some form. It's not like, Anarchapistan, and Capistan solves the ills of an evil heart that wants to just murder people.
He would have got McNuke trademarked the moment he would have pulled his gun out.
Right. Yeah, he would. I would have had to put the quarter into the gun, and then I would have fired at him.
But I didn't. I thought.
So
Paul,
I know I've kind of I know I've kind of like spun us off, but that's the trade-off
right.
here is
when it comes down to it, right? These mass shooter tops stuff like this. Here's some cold hard logic, which really freaking sucks. Is they're still rare. This is rare. This is a drop in a bucket of everything that ever happens inside the United States.
right.
There, 17 deaths at one time. That's a Saturday in Chicago, and that's multiple shootings.
Right.
That's multiple people. And there's so many of this. Juarez, Mexico, Africa, stuff like that. These are drops in they are so mass shootings that this type of thing is so freaking rare.
Right.
That one, it's also hard to even come up with a pattern and know who's going to do this.
Right.
Granted, he kind of fit the pattern in retrospect of a serial killer, but majority of them don't. Majority of gun owners don't go off. People who have AR-15s, they do not go off and shoot like this. So we don't have a pattern there. People say like he had mental issues, but most people who have mental issues do not go off and shoot people.
Right.
If he was on psychotropics, most people on psychotropics do not go off and shoot people. So that's not a pattern there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but if you're a libertarian, if you're a listener that you posted like the SSRIs made him do it,
Yeah.
No.
like I'm sorry, you're a jackass. Like you're just wrong, and this pseudoscience that libertarians seem to be attracted to. I don't get why you're into it. I just don't understand why you would think that, there's millions of people in the United States who are on anti-anxiety drugs who are not killing people. Like,
Correct.
sometimes there's just people that are evil. Like, instead of going, this person's a messed up, evil human being, we gotta push this like pseudoscience saying it's the psychotropic drugs. Like, come on.
Yeah,
You make yourself look crazy.
It's
And us
pattern
too.
seeking.
Right.
The one thing that the human mind wants is control,
Mm-hmm.
and we're seeking a pattern. And SSRIs are prescribed to a lot of these people.
Sure.
Not all of them, and most people that are on SSRIs are not going to do this.
Correct.
Right.
But the sort of person that ends up doing this is highly likely to be the sort of person who needs an SSRI.
Well, not even that, but like heavily medicated. I mean, we're
Well,
talking about
yeah.
somebody here who is deeply affected, deeply touched, as they used to say in our grandparents' generation.
Well, the thing is, like, a person like that wanted to kill somebody, so we already know they have a mental issue. That's what either they didn't get treatment for that, or their treatment didn't work, or it's incorrect treatment. That possibly happened.
Sure. As Galt put it, it's a correlation. It's not a causation
Exactly.
necessarily.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because the other the scary truth is like that. In order for it to really find a pattern to give sufficient evidence to stop this type of thing, the unfortunate aspect of it needs to keep happening, and it happen more at a rapid fashion to us to be able to get a pattern of enough data. That's sad. I don't want that to happen. No, I don't want it to happen. And I wish it would stop. But the only way for you to really put a pattern, if it continues to happen, happens more frequency and happens more often. But it doesn't.
Right.
It rarely happens. It's a rare event.
So Galt says that if you're prescribed medication, you should not be allowed to use a firearm. Do you guys agree with that?
Heck no.
No.
Heck no.
I don't either.
I think if you vape, you probably shouldn't, have a firearm.
Well, the Venn diagram of people that want to vape and people that want to own firearms is very little overlap. So,
I don't know about that.
Sub-ohm, bruh.
Yeah, there are a lot of patterns that like the wetting the bed thing. Like there are the likelihood that he's medicated. What I get tired of, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is I get irritated when people pick one element and make that to be the reason. Yes, messed up meds could make a psychotic person more psychotic.
Correct.
It absolutely affects your brain.
right.
But is that the only reason that this kid did that? No.
No.
We have to take into the complexities of the situations of these school shooters and go, yes, their psychiatric situation is very relevant to this discussion. their mental illness is very relevant to this discussion. And how does American law, society, culture, how do we all interact with these kind of people? We don't understand why somebody does this. And my frustration with people who just push gun control is that we never get to have that conversation about why this person, what is it about their mental state that causes these situations, because we're so focused on trying to defend our natural right to own a firearm to protect ourselves, instead of focusing on like the mental health aspects. Like, I mean, there's very little solutions that are talked about in these situations because people are so focused on the one part of why this stuff happens. Or, you know, it's like, if it's not guns, then it's the SSRIs, that's the reason, and it's never just the reason. Like, the world is not so black and white.
White male.
White male. Yes, we need to end white male.
Even though that's kind of screws over Virginia Tech.
Right, yeah.
And then a DC sniper.
Right.
And, but anyways, but yeah, everyone looks for that one comment thread, that one thing that, and then for some reason and you're right, they like to dwell on it. The other issue when it comes to trying to talk to people with this incident or any type of change is one thing when you want to talk to a gun control activist, you want to talk about, well, let's talk about the laws that are on the books. I'm willing to discuss new laws, but let's talk what we have that was on the books and what failed. What failed for this event? And that's a conversation majority of them do not want to have. They want to rush to something else. And
right.
Like, no. We can talk about that. But the first, we must analyze what we have now. If we cannot analyze what we have now, well, we don't know, you know, or if we can't identify threats or the things that we have to prevent things, then we don't know. Then you're just throwing good at bad, you know?
Yeah.
It's the same way when things break at most companies that you watch people who if computer networks go down or if someone's car breaks, they just start throwing parts at it just trying to assess, whoa, what failed? Why did it fail?
Right.
Let's analyze that first. That takes on. No. You don't understand? We'll get a better result if we analyze first what happened, what failed. And if something fell through because it wasn't checked or kept up on, okay, let's patch that too. Now, can we add on other things too to prevent other things in the future? Heck yes. But first, we need to analyze what we have now. Sorry, you wanted to read something?
No, I'm just waiting for you to finish your point, and then I'm gonna validate what you're saying.
Yeah, because when it comes down to it, like when people they want to talk about the AR-15 and the assault weapons ban and bringing out the assault weapons ban. The assault weapons ban, it didn't work. It was ineffective. It was ineffective because of the logical conclusions that would come out from doing a ban. One, the United States government has a rough estimate of how many guns are inside the United States. It's a rough estimate. They did a survey, but how many people answer those surveys correctly? I know myself when I got a survey like that, I said I had 1,000 guns.
Yeah, I mean, and so nobody really knows how many.
Right. Yeah.
Like, as I've said, like, gun confiscation nuts should be called gun confiscation nuts. Like, if they're going to be arguably abusive towards us, like, at some point you have to go, let's stop arguing my rights. I'm not going to argue my rights with you anymore because my rights just exist and you're going to have to just deal with that fact because you have the same rights. I'm protecting your rights, even though, like, here's the cold, hard truth. Democide is a thing. Google democide, D-E-M-O-C-I-D-E. It is murder by government. Governments killed 266 million people last century alone. Okay,
some of those were communists or socialists.
Well, a large portion of them were communists. In China was the front runner with 76 million. You had 55 million in the USSR.
Estimate.
You had, like 76 million and 55 million make the Holocaust at 12 look like child's play. And in every one of these instances where you've got Pol Pot, where you've got these megalomaniacs, they disarm the population first, and then the government systematically kills people.
Right.
And so when you look at the list of democide, the United States isn't even, like, on the list because there's so many other regimes. And the reason is because we are a country where our government does kill people.
Yes.
Absolutely. If you listen to the cost episodes, you understand that. But the percentage is not 76 million out of 330 million. Like, it is because we are a well-armed society. And if you want to prevent the greatest mass murderer in history, called government, from murdering more people, then you have to have an armed society. That is the purpose of the Second Amendment. And I have to start, like, I'll talk about speaking with boldness later, but we have to start making that point. And I know that it seems so crazy to some people now, but the idea that you are going to confiscate 360 million guns in this country and not have someone die is fucking insane. You're a dumb person if you believe that. If you believe that you can confiscate all the guns of America and change the culture, you're dumb. It has never worked in any country it's been tried. Australia, a third of the weapons were confiscated, which means 2/3 still exist. All of these school shootings exist in gun-free zones. You have gun-free cities like Chicago where murder rates are the highest. You have, conversely, the murder rate, especially by gun violence, has dropped dramatically over 30 years, while the amount of guns has doubled. So you're like, I'm just watching so much of the conversation around this debate going, the left is just, they just don't know what they're talking about. Like, a pistol can't stop a person with an AR-15. You're dumb. They're full assault weapons. You're dumb. An AR-15 is the most, like, I listen to these 17-year-old kids that are like the David Hogg kid. He's a dumb, like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's uneducated.
No.
Like, as I was at 17. He's not, he's an authority on living through a tragedy. If he was, I mean, listen, we have to start saying things that we know people, like, on their side, they're going to shame us, they're going to blame us, they're going to make us feel guilty about saying it, but they're saying things that are more insane, that they're going to confiscate guns, which, they're not saying that. No one ever said they're going to confiscate guns. Stop lying.
Literally the next sentence out of their mouths is how they need to confiscate all the guns.
Right. So all right, so you confiscate full semi-automatic weapons, which is the phrase that is being introduced in the House bills right now.
Yeah, my semi-automatic pistol.
Right. You ban long rifles, semi-automatic guns. Okay, what's next? Then you're going to go to pistols, because that's the next, like, we know this cycle, you're never going to stop, and frankly, you're never going to get our guns. So let's start explaining the reason for the Second Amendment. It's not just for self-protection. It's for the Second Amendment is about protecting your person, your family, and your community. And when push comes to shove, like in 1776, you have to protect your community from a government run amok. That's why
Or the Whiskey Rebellion.
Part of the reason that they included, 3/5 in the Constitution. Sorry, Harry, was that they didn't want to naturalize slaves, because then that would entitle them to own weapons, because they didn't want armed revolts. So this, 1776 is going to commence again if you try to take our guns.
He's going Alex Jones.
By the way, Alex Jones, one strike away from being removed from YouTube. If his YouTube channel gets one more strike within the next 3 months, and if you don't think they're being struck left and right now, you're crazy.
He doesn't need YouTube.
Those at Sandy Hook, and he said that it was. So, anyways, yeah.
YouTube needs him.
So, InfoWars got another strike in their YouTube account for a Florida shooting video. Now, one strike left before they get banned. They have 2.2 million on Facebook. So, they're just dishonest. And so, we need to be more honest and more bold in what we're saying, because they're just saying dumb things. And instead of saying, they're saying dumb things, we need to start saying true things. We need to call out their manipulative, emotional bullying, but we also need to start saying, this is your right to own a firearm. And I know you have been so brainwashed out of understanding your rights, but I'm going to be the one to educate you.
Not only is it firearm, it's the right to arm yourself, to defend yourself, to arm yourself. That's why it says right to bear arms, not muskets, not cannons.
Blacks in the 60s needed firearms. in the southern states and in Indiana.
People need.
Right.
I'm
saying that is a
but
very
yeah, you're right.
specific
Yeah,
case
60,
where
the 60s, the 70s, the 50s, the 40s, the 30s, the 20s, from 1863 on, and before that, they needed firearms. Interracial couples in the 70s and some part of the 80s needed firearms to protect themselves from different people. In the 90s, and it's probably even a lot of the GLBTQ whatever community needed needed firearms because some people go after them, especially the trans community. People still attack people in the trans community just for who they are and how they walk down the street.
Nobody messed with Maya. Maya was armed all the time. Maya was also kind of nuts.
Yeah.
But Maya was a trans person, and nobody was going to mess with Maya because Maya was armed.
Yeah, and it's not, and that's you have the ability to defend your gun system. Like that. The other problems, a lot of these gun the laws and controls is they also put a thing on almost all weapons. So they disarm a lot of different people for different even non-lethal issues. Just like on that campus, no one there had mace.
Right.
No one there had mace or a taser. These are non-lethal things that could sit in someone's pocket, but no one had it because no, 0 tolerance on all weapons, knives, everything.
Right.
Everything.
Which is, and all of this illustrates today what you cannot put your safety and security in the hands of law enforcement and government.
Right. Yeah.
And if you want to make the argument that you should take our guns and take our right to defend ourselves, then you are saying the government will protect you, that we are taking responsibility for protecting you. Do you think that, when 2 planes hit the Twin Towers, did anybody go to jail in 9/11 for failing to protect this nation? No. Did anybody in the 2008 crash go to jail for failure to protect the American people from greed and ripping us off? No. Is Sheriff Israel going to jail for failing to protect his community? No. Because the government, when policing itself, does not ever police itself. It does not ever punish itself, and therefore there are no consequences, and so they have no incentive to do a good job. Secondly, law enforcement is terrible in prevention. Government in general is terrible at prevention, and that's why we have to be better at prevention. And Ben Shapiro is getting some flack for saying we need to treat our children like our banks, and we need to have armed security guarding our children. Even though it failed in this case, in other cases, it's like you guys said, they stop when you're shooting. Like, we need to arm teachers. What do you guys think about arming teachers, by the way? Like, we'll get into that next, but I know you guys are, like, I'm saying stuff and you are, like, biting your lips, Harry. So, like, law enforcement can't protect you. They can help, but they're backup.
Law enforcement is not proactive. There are many places where they have tried the proactive approach, but when it comes down to it, they show up after a crime is committed and they either arrest or investigate.
Right.
And you can try to be as proactive as you want, but for every cop in Chicago, there's 5 gang members. They're going to be breaking the law somewhere where the cops aren't. You cannot be proactive enough to prevent everything.
Right.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing about Chicago I wanted to bring up. The cool thing about Chicago, the South Side of Chicago has the least amount of legal gun ownership. Yeah.
So
I bet they have a very low crime rate on the South Side.
Yeah.
Another stupid thing that gets trotted out is that America is not normal in the rest of the developed world. So let me explain something. Let me read these stats from the Crime Prevention Research Center, a guy named John Lott. John Lott is one of the leading gun rights statisticians today, and his Crime Prevention Research Center puts out a lot of interesting stats. Very interesting follow on Twitter to get the other side. So if you watch like an hour of CNN, then you have to spend like at least 2 minutes on John Lott's website. And that's LOTT. So a study of global mass shooting incidents from 2009 to 2015 by the CPRC shows the U.S. doesn't lead the world in mass shootings. In fact, it doesn't even make the top 10 when measured by death rate per million population for mass public shootings. Here's the list of the top 18 countries. And I don't know if I'll read all 18, but Norway's at the top, presumably because of the terrible tragedy where 77 people were killed in a mass shooting in 2011. Then there is Serbia. Serbia is number 1 at 0.38%. Then France, Macedonia, Albania, Slovakia, Switzerland, Finland, Belgium, Czech Republic, the United States at 0.089, Austria, the Netherlands, Canada, England, Germany, Russia, and Italy. So the argument that we're not normal in the developed world is horseshit, frankly. It's trotted out by people who are the Council on Foreign Relations crowd who want us to be like the rest of the world. I'm sorry, like Lithuania and Estonia and Serbia and Finland and Austria, like your country of 2 million people, your laws don't have any application to a country of 360 million people. Like it's not this idea that we need, like we are on the moral equivalency of the Netherlands. Like, no, we're not. We're better than the Netherlands. I'm sorry. Like, you take your 2 million people and go home.
Yeah, they want to be like, the Netherlands want to be like us.
Sorry, my jingoism is coming out.
The Netherlands wants to be like us.
Right. Like, the Netherlands could be comparable to an upscale neighborhood of New York. Like,
very white in the Netherlands, too, isn't it?
Well, you want to bring that into it.
Sorry. And they have a really nice border, by the way. Border wall.
They do, actually.
But no, like...
Yeah, they just have it. Yeah.
You know, you want to compare the mass shooting rates. That's a much more applicable comparison. But, you know, if you look at just the overall gun crime rate, you know, yeah, you're going to have fewer deaths by gun when they're less available because suicides are impulsive.
Yeah.
And they are, when you attempt suicide with a gun, you'd really have to mess up to not succeed.
Right.
Whereas I'm sure they have the same attempt of suicide rate. I would, within reason, of course. But, you know, if you make it really hard to get a gun, and the ones that you do have in the country are very hard to get a hold of or not accessible to somebody who's having their impulsive suicide thoughts, you know, they're going to choose hanging, or they're going to choose prescription overdose, or they're going to slit their wrists. And those are much more, like, I've seen it cited that it is much lower suicide rates when you take guns out. Well, yes, but I don't think the attempt rate is much different.
Yeah. And with the cooldown period for, like, that's one of the gun control arguments like to put out is the cooldown period having a 3-day or 7-day wait period. The only thing that does stop is that first attempt at suicide. If they were thinking those thoughts, wanted to go get a gun, having a 3 to 7 day cooldown could possibly stop someone or have someone give someone more time to either find someone that will give them the help that they need. But that only happens once. After that 7 day, it's sitting on their shelf now.
So,
and majority of these active shooter people, mass shooters, most of them had their guns for months. No, I haven't read one that they went and got it that afternoon and went shooting.
So I want to go through this list of questions, and we'll kind of get to, because there's some answers and some of the points we're bringing up on some of this, you know, in terms of solutions, and I want to get your opinions on them. The one of them is raising the age to 21 to buy guns. So you have to be 21 to buy a pistol, correct?
No, not in Indiana. You have to be 21 to buy a handgun pistol and 18 to buy a shotgun or a long rifle.
Okay. And so they want to make that 21 across the board. So you have to be 21 to buy any firearm unless you go in the military and you're 18, then you can shoot a weapon. Which is silly. So what do you guys think about raising, because again, one of the correlations here is that these are all younger men. So if we raise the age, a lot of suicides are young men too. We raise the age to 21, then that may stop people from getting guns.
Well, all right. on that case, but that's still a drop into the bucket of teenage death or just death. Period.
Right.
If we raise the age of driving a car to 21, we can take out tens of thousands of teenage death right off the books.
Right.
We can prevent a lot of that.
So
But
you're making
no one wants to talk about bringing that up. But the other thing with it is the idea that then either 18 is not the arbitrary age that we use to count as an adult. I see it as the particular one as the culture because of the fact that is when you get through our public education system.
right.
Because no one wants to deal with someone who's an adult with full rights and a public education system.
Well,
it's annoying, but since they have everything active, you can vote, you can do all these things, but you won't have access to all your rights until 21. I think it's crap.
Right.
I think it's weak sauce ground that you can't get a handgun at 18. Anyways, I believe if you're an adult, you have full consciousness. You can sign into contracts. You can do everything else. You should be able to get. You should have a handgun. You should be able to. You should have the ability to purchase a handgun. Waiting till you're 21, waiting 3 years. That's here no there. You're going to do something.
Well, we're schizophrenic about age. 21 to drink, 18 for various rights with like the military. We're 26 on the insurance on your parents. There's 16 to drive. Like we're very there's all these different levels that we've created instead of just saying like at 18 you get your full rights as a citizen. Yeah. You're no longer your parents' property, essentially.
Correct. And a lot of these age things, it also it skews at different things. It's you're 21, you can finally drink. So you've been away from your parents, the main people who have raised you and taught you about the world, and now that you're away from for 3 years, we're going to allow you to drink. Which most people's first type of drink where they can legally drink is in college. So they're around people who aren't really the most responsible adults in the world, have that much experience with alcohol, and then when you want to have someone to drink, it's the dumbest thing in the world.
It's why you don't have binge drinking in Germany, until you're middle aged. But in teenagers, it's just they don't have the drinking problem in Europe like we do here.
Yeah,
which comparing that to the current topic, we didn't have this huge mass shooting problem when your dad took you out hunting at the age of 7.
Right.
Yeah, and and it's mostly and it's all on purchase because you can even handle it, which is also it's dumb. It's dumb because there's so many other weapons that are out in the world. There's so many things you have access to. This is arbitrary. Now the handgun thing is weak sauce, but it stands on the ground because the simple fact that majority of crime of gun crime are handguns, not long rifles.
Right. Prohibition doesn't work in any situation.
Yeah.
And
ever.
I think that even if we lowered the age for handgun purchasing to 18, the amount of people that would legally purchase a firearm and then turn around and use it in a crime is negligible. Something along 3 to 5% of all guns used in crime.
The people who are going to wait to buy a gun are not the ones that are going to commit the crime usually.
Right,
You don't go out and commit a crime with a gun you bought legally unless you're mentally insane like these kids are.
Right, yeah.
Should we lower the age of voting to 16?
Ooh, that's a good one. You want to go?
I mean, if you don't trust them with a bullet, why do you trust them with a ballot?
Right.
I mean, the idea that we're going to put policy in the hands of even more impulsive of an age group, while at the same time trying to restrict something that is arguably less dangerous in the form of firearms, and I'm probably going to catch a little bit of heat for that, but, policy is a dangerous thing, and I don't trust the 60-year-olds that we have with policy. Why would I trust a 16-year-old?
I agree. Only millennials should be allowed to vote.
Yes. And certain cool Gen Xers, the cool ones.
No. 1980 to 2000, if you're not born within those years, you're out.
There's a lot of cool Gen Xers.
Nope, they're out.
And the thing is, because if you allow 16-year-olds to vote, this is how you get Paul 2020. And I'm not talking about Ran or Ron. I'm talking about Logan and Jake Paul.
Right, yeah. This is an...
Every day, bro.
This is an idiotic fantasy by the left because they want to expand their voter base.
Right, and Jake Paul and Logan Paul, no.
Yeah. Every
Yeah,
day,
like,
bro.
But no, you do need those 2 extra years to start to realize, like, oh, what I thought, like, just 6 months ago, I was a freaking idiot. And,
Yeah.
you know, most of us have that experience constantly throughout the rest of our lives, but at least by the time we're 18, we're second-guessing ourselves.
Yeah, but majority of 18-year-olds, their first vote they got is for a Democratic ballot, usually.
I didn't learn to think critically until college. I mean, I just don't think that somebody who is 16 is responsible enough to participate in something, as Paul says, as serious as public policy.
Mark Edge always talked about, like, one thing you could do is make it more difficult to vote or just to do different things, like the idea of the ballot should be blank. You should have to write in the person's full correct name that's on the ballot and the race that they're going for.
Abdul advocates for the same thing, and I find that compelling, yeah.
Yeah, which is, like, to me, like, that's awesome, because then you don't have someone going in, straight ticket, and walking out.
If you're not informed enough to spell the person's name correctly, then you shouldn't be voting.
Right, yeah. All you do is fill in these dots, and when they walk out the door, like, thank you. That's where the roads suck.
Right.
Well,
that's why we don't have Sunday beer, because you put up a loser who, made so we don't have Sunday cold beer at Kroger.
as long as there's a way to type it in, because as somebody with rather poor penmanship, I really, if I go to cast a vote,
here we go with the voter suppression argument.
Yeah, no.
Sorry if your disability.
All right, so how much responsibility should we turn over to the government to protect us?
0. Because they have shown in Supreme Court cases that when it has come out there, they have no order of responsibility for anyone.
It ideally 0.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely nothing should be turned over to the government. But, if we have buildings such as public schools where we send our young people to be warehoused for 8 hours a day, we definitely need to do more to provide security there.
Well, like, they put security in schools, the inner city schools where the other peoples are, the poor people in the world,
right?
Where where shootings and stuff that did happen and didn't get the news that much. This is where they treat them like criminals, and they give metal detectors, and they have armed security guard every 5 feet, something like that, and security cameras everywhere.
Yeah, I would say as close to 0 as possible as well. I think when it comes to something like a school, if you make security part of the school and you get rid of this notion that these should be gun-free zones, like that makes everybody feel good, but that's not working. That's not logical. There are no guns when you need guns, and the only people that don't bring guns to school are the reasonable. Like, it's anytime you have a gun-free zone, it's stupid. There should at least, even if there are no guns in a school, there should at least be the illusion that somebody's armed, right?
Well, yeah. Well, all right. Do I think the kids should be walking around? Kids should be walking around with guns in school? Probably not. Should teachers be walking around with guns on their waist and stuff like that? Probably not. Just like you don't see in most military installations, most of them don't walk around with guns because the MPs and everything, they have guns. They have authorized to use it. The people are acting as police and security. They have guns. But if you're just sitting there wrenching on something like that, possibly not.
Right. Well, schools are also fire-free zones, but they don't not have fire extinguishers on the walls.
Right.
Right, yeah.
We have a tool that will help prevent these sorts of incidents, and we bar it legally from schools.
Mm-hmm.
If we tried the same thing with fire extinguishers, well, the fire's
and it's a federal. Yeah, it's federal.
Yeah.
It's a federal block, not a state block. It's a federal block.
Right. Well, I do believe I would have to track down the laws, but I believe Utah allows firearms in their schools through state law.
Correct. Yeah, you have to open it up, just like in New Hampshire, you can do that in certain places too. But it's all in the little districts.
All right, so speaking of arming teachers, I read a post by a local libertarian who is a teacher, and he basically said, I don't want to be armed, and I don't want other teachers to be armed, because here's the reality of the situation. Student comes in, and you are in a classroom, and they have a weapon. You lock the door, you barricade your kids. Schools are now practicing, like I have a friend who said that their kid was practicing robber drills at school, in elementary school or middle school, and he was like, robbery? Well, this is in case somebody comes in to rob the school. Oh, okay. And so you've got drills now and where here's what we do in the event of this situation, and it's hiding. And the teacher was basically saying, I don't want to be the one to leave my frightened students alone so I can go out and start hunting. And hold on. So I can go out and start hunting and then end up having to kill a student that I have spent, let's say, a year or a semester with and have bonded with. Now, here's my argument to that teacher. You probably didn't bond with the type of individual that becomes a school shooter. Like, if anything, you were probably sending him to the principal to pawn him off. But the idea of arming teachers is not going to be popular with a lot of teachers, although it may be popular with, it's popular or unpopular, right? So what do you guys think about the argument of arming teachers and, because arming security guards, treating it like a bank, like Ben Shapiro said, makes total sense. Having security guards, like there were 2 security guards here, but there were obviously tragedies would happen in that situation. But if you had more people who were armed, then there wouldn't have been that situation because there would have been people in the building who were prepared. Right.
So, first of all, I take a little bit of an exception to the scenario as presented. I don't think anybody wants a teacher who is armed in a school to go out hunting the gunman.
Which I don't think that's how it would happen anyway.
No. The point is that you have somebody armed who is there with your room full of 30 kids, and they're in the back as far away from the doors and windows as possible, hiding. And if somebody enters that room without identifying themselves as somebody that is trustworthy, then you have the ability to take them out before they can harm you or any of those kids.
Right.
This concept that we're going to have roving bands of teachers hunting for a gunman is asinine.
Well, his other argument was, what if there are 10 other teachers that are armed and then we accidentally shoot each other because we mistake them for the school shooter?
Okay, well, it's amazing how SWAT teams don't manage to blow each other away when they're making entry on a house, or other armed police response teams don't end up greasing themselves.
They do have accidents, but usually come through communication through radios.
Right. Well, a radio for all of the teachers would be a great thing.
Yeah, so this Christian school in Texas that Vice covered, that I posted the link on the last episode. Actually, it was the last Thursday episode where we talked, not the Joe Houtman episode, which if you didn't listen to it, you definitely should. I got a lot of great response on that. But they essentially have there's several armed teachers. Nobody knows who the armed teachers are except for the armed teachers. They're not concealed carry. They're in a desk. They practice drills. The students practice drills on how to take somebody down. The students practice not just hiding, but a physical altercation with somebody, so they can be part of the solution. It was really fascinating to see this school, which said, we're going to take security seriously, and here's what we're going to do in an active shooter situation. We're going to get, not only are we going to get teachers involved, we're not going to ask students to go hunting, but we're going to teach them self-defense tools, which I thought was a really smart move. Like, let's be honest, if you're the mother or father of a high school female, having some self-defense like before they go to college probably wouldn't be a bad idea. So I liked the way that they had laid it out, and it didn't seem so scary when I saw a school actually have this kind of plan.
All right. Well, all right. So it sounds great, and it sounds also very expensive. The other thing with it is this could all be changed just by some sort of main entrance and key card controller and control physical access inside the building.
I find it hard to believe that like a lot of these my school had it in Plainfield.
How the heck did this guy get an AR-15 then?
He had an AR-15. That's how. Like,
right.
Sometimes
but
that's
yeah, but if the door could physically lock, he had to walk through somewhere, a security checkpoint, stuff like that. These things happen. A lot of banks have metal detectors, man traps. You walk in, other door doesn't open until you go through the metal detector. controlling physical access to the building would stop a lot of all these different things. Most kids have, most schools force you to have an ID badge, just like a lot of businesses do. A lot of people understand, a lot of grown adults use their keypads or their badge to scan a chip, and open a door. Granted, does tailgating happen? Yeah, but it prevents someone from going from building to building to building. And if as long as people are security aware to make sure tailgating doesn't happen, hey, that stops someone just from getting in the building, period.
Right.
The idea of being active to go into security, that sounds cool to give people confidence, but rushing someone with an AR-15 and you don't have a weapon, you're going to get shot in the face.
Right.
It's like I said, it's not a movie. You're not going to baseball slide, hit him with the low knee, hit him with a low knee kick. He's going to drop the gun and you're going to get it from him. No, you're going to get shot in the face.
And I think that's what a lot of people on the left are doing too. They're concocting a story similar to the movies on how a tactical situation would go down as opposed to operating from a place of knowledge, which is why I really can't stand the whole gun debate, because you can't argue with idiots. You can't argue with people who don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
People who are willfully ignorant and want to believe in the fantasy of gun confiscation.
Yeah.
Right.
But and you'd be amazed and like I said, just like the whole locked door thing, you'd be amazed what a locked door can. But a lot of these doors don't have locks, and if they do have locks, the teachers do not have keys.
Right.
So
are you for arming teachers or not?
Personal choice in the teacher. I would wish the laws would be removed so that teachers and the school districts could have policies and they can just choose on that choice of their own and allow the marketplace of ideas to be able to choose that. I don't want to be able to choose that. What I would like my child to go to a school that did have teachers were armed. My kids wouldn't go to a public school, a thing like that. So.
Right.
But I know, and that's an easy answer to say. There's an easy answer to say. But if I did have to choose, gun to my head, have to send Gunther to a school, I would probably choose one that more people had guns at it, just because of the simple fact that I'm not more, going for after shooter. I am actually in for the robber or just for violent crime happening around in an area.
Yeah.
Which is more likely.
So, David French at the National Review wrote about something that 3 states have already passed, something called the Gun Violence Restraining Order. And the New York Times covered it again in the Daily today, calling it a red flag law.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially what a gun violence restraining order does is an immediate family member or a law enforcement person can go to a judge and put a temporary restraining order on a person's right to own guns. Let's say in this situation, there were plenty of people who, if this tool had been available, obviously the family members around him were concerned enough to go to the courts, go first to the police, then the courts, and say, this person's violent, we need to take a look at this. It would then, because you take that situation we talked about earlier where even he's calling in and saying, I'm really struggling here. The police had absolutely no legal authority to do anything. They couldn't, there was no mental health thing that they could have done. There was no legal thing that they could have done. This would carve out an option, a preventative option, where you can go and say, my father's suicidal, he's got guns, take these away for 90 days.
If it's written in there, so...
Now, here's part of the problem. Let me say this, because this is an important point. In the 3 states that have this, Washington, I think California, maybe some other place.
Indiana has a law just similar like that.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the defendant, because it's filed in civil court, it's not a criminal motion, it's civil court. It is the defendant is not allowed to defend themselves. Now the reason is speed, because they say this is a very quick thing, and if we're going to wait on it might tip the person off. We just can't have the danger of them arguing against this thing. I don't ever like a defendant in any court not being able to defend themselves, but I also do see the wisdom behind that part of the law. And I know that we're against passing laws, but to me this seems kind of like a common sense thing. It is temporary. I absolutely see how this could be abused. Mm-hmm. Let's say somebody comes on this podcast, they say something, it concerns a family member who's crazy, and has it out for that family member, then they go to the court. I absolutely see how this could be used used improperly.
Yeah.
But in the case of these school shooters, it would have saved 17 lives in this shooter's case, in my opinion.
Well, the other thing is, if someone says that this person has guns, then they'll have to search the house because they don't have a record or database if this person actually does have guns or how many guns they are collecting.
Right.
So it's ineffective in that case.
Right.
Which is, I'm glad there's no database. I'm not asking for a database to be built. I'm just saying it will be ineffective for that reason. I think it's crap that I think nothing is serious enough that someone cannot defend themselves in trial. If it's so serious that you need to do it, then the judge, the trial, it happens immediately. Him and his guns are brought before the judge, and he's giving it enough time to defend himself.
I get the impression this kid would have gone, yeah, I need some help.
Well, yeah, but that's the fact that you're basically stripping someone's rights away temporarily. That's just the same thing as like, hey, can we temporarily just throw someone in jail for 6 months?
Well,
we think
these are crafted on domestic violence laws,
right?
Yeah.
Well, I would want to know what immediate recourse there is. Like, say, you put in for one of these temporary restraining orders. Is there a hearing within the first week? Is there anything, or is it just you have nothing 90 days?
Right.
It really depends a lot on the way the law is structured because there has to be due process there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But that due process can be restorative. The cops can arrest you, and then during your hearing, you are able to argue your way out of it or something. There can be due process with this, and still, be able to put in that barrier.
Yeah.
And that's going to be something that I'd have to actually read through the laws before I could say whether I support it or not.
Yeah, because we're talking about stripping someone's right with no due process, any ability to defend themselves, which is awful.
I absolutely understand the gravity of what is being proposed here.
Which it has been shown. We have things on record that, unfortunately, in this country, that people have used our laws on the books vindictively to cause harm onto people. People saying false rape accusations.
Including the domestic violence laws that these are based on. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Claiming like this person hit me, they probably have never touched their hands on it, or if they did, they simply did it in self-defense on themselves, but they hit harder.
Like the Clive and Bundy situation, this could have been invoked in that situation. When that's those are not people who necessarily need to have their guns stripped from them, but in the case of somebody like Ruby Ridge, you could have, in the case of Ruby Ridge specifically, where somebody goes to collect the guns and it turns into a standoff situation.
You mean like Waco?
Yeah. So this is not necessarily none of these solutions that we're kind of talking about here are the silver bullet.
Yeah,
but,
right. Well, with Waco, that also turned the thing because the sheriff in that town sitting there and told the ATF, hey, don't go. These people are afraid of the government. Don't like that. You should just walk up there in plain clothes. Don't be afraid of them. And don't go up there in your tank. What did they do? They drove up there in their tank and full tack gear.
Yeah. This was an interesting idea. I don't agree with it, from a libertarian perspective. And it wouldn't last under First Amendment, but should media outlets be fined for using the shooter's name? Obviously, I don't. I've done it 4 times tonight on accident. But you look at CNN and you look at the New York Times and the Daily Mail and some of these others. We are libertarians, and the Daily Wire and other outlets are saying we're not going to use this person's name because we're not going to make them famous. There are studies that show that the repeated lionization of this person by the media, the use of this person's name, it does have a copycat effect. And so somebody like this particular shooter starts to idolize past shooters. And media outlets, I think, really need to think about their moral responsibility, their duty to this country and communities around you shouldn't put this person, his name and his photo up all the time. But I also understand it's newsworthy. And so I'm not for fining media outlets because, again, we have a First Amendment, but at the same time, I do think that there really should be a strong conversation in these newsrooms about what they're doing, because I do think they bear some responsibility for this turning into a trend over the last 20 years.
Yeah, I doubt that. I doubt that the fact doubt that it causes that many copycats as it says it does.
Mm-hmm.
could probably stop one, possibly. I like the idea that they're not going to try to make this person. I like that the idea that it is like something that some people just agree on, and that's and it's voluntary. That's what I appreciate.
Well, I think that even if you strip the name out of all the coverage, you make it so that it's just an event that happened and it's just what you're reporting on, I think you still have the chance of a copycat, because maybe they don't need to be famous.
Yeah.
Maybe all they want is that fear, that power that they get by carrying out something like this. And at that point, if you go as far as to ban them from talking about the person themselves, then you might as well bar them from covering this sort of story altogether, because, just the reporting on the events, the fear behind it is going to be something that somebody else might want to replicate.
Yeah, correct. Because even if they don't mention the name is still going to be out there.
Of course.
Yeah, the name is out there. It's going to be public information.
Right, but there's a difference, and I can tell you, doing this as for a living, like when you want to embed something in people's minds, you repeat it over and over and over. I know one of the names of the Columbine shooters. I know the name of the Sandy Hook shooter, but I've made a point to not learn the name of any of the others. Like, I don't know the name of I think if I thought hard enough, I could think of the Vegas shooter. But I just think that there is a real effect that takes place when the media repeats something over and over and over.
I don't know any of their names. I don't know the names of the Columbine shooters. I don't know. I had to look up the name of the guy from the Virginia Tech shooting. I had to look up even the guy who shot Brady. I had to go look that guy up. I couldn't remember his name.
Right.
I almost forgot. I almost said it too, and I can't even.
Yeah.
I wanted to say it. I can't even think of the guy's name. Actually,
right, like the Aurora guy.
Yeah, I can't think of any of these guys' names. I know their crimes and their victims, but that's me. That's my brain.
Another point on the media, the CNN town hall, as I have referred to it as the 1984 2 Minutes Hate, it was stunning. When you have a kid saying, when I look at you, Senator, I'm looking down the barrel of an AR-15. You know what I'm genuinely asking this. I have not been able to find the story of the kids that are consistently trotted out every day on CNN, like David Hogg and the her name's Gonzalez with the shaved head. Yeah. The kids who are pro-gun control are trotted out all the time. The kids who are not pro-gun, they're pro-gun rights, are not on CNN. They're, now they're starting to get on Fox News or whatever. But these kids have turned into a football. We talked a lot about them on the last episode. I wanted to give you guys your chance to talk about it. I agree that they have a right to speak. I think that they have, something to share in terms of an experience that most of us don't have. But they didn't go through this tragedy, and the second somebody pulled a gun in their school, immediately learn more about gun rights and statistics and studying the issue. I mean, they don't know more now. They probably know more now, 2 weeks later or a week later, than they did right before. Like, they don't become experts because they've been through a tragedy. Right. But what I want to know is, what were their personal experiences? What I have not heard discussed is, were they in proximity to the shooter? Were they in another building? Like, are these kids being trotted out as experts when they they're just go to the school? I mean, obviously, if they went to the school, it's a traumatic thing. I'm not trying to undermine that, but I've not actually seen anybody in the media ask that question. Like, what was your experience? And so, if you have seen that, I would appreciate seeing that, because it's something that in preparation for this episode I couldn't find. So if you have seen their story, I am interested in it. But it's wildly inappropriate for CNN to take students who are going through a traumatic time and allow them to say ridiculous things to somebody like Marco Rubio, who is a politician, yes, but saying that you see your friend's dead faces and like his face and, you know, Dana Lash, how do you feel about murdering my friends? Like, it's morally gross. It's morally inappropriate. And like Jake Tapper should have immediately said, this is not right. This is not how we actually operate discourse. But, you know, should we listen to these kids? What do you guys think about the new faces that we're never not going to see these? Like David Hogg is already thinking about dropping out of high school to become a professional gun control advocate. Like every time there's a shooting from here on out, they're going to be trotted out, and like his logic on everything that he says is so poor because he's 17.
Right.
Like I heard one commentator say, like, okay, well, now we're listening to teenagers, so when are we going to start? We tried out Jimmy Kimmel's Baby. We'll start listening to him, and then at a certain point, we'll start just listening to Plants for our public policy, because the logic of a 17-year-old is childish, and you see in their arguments childish thinking because they're uninformed teenagers.
Right.
Right.
So what do you guys think about it now that I've said my piece?
So, you know, it's really difficult, and that's why they're being trotted out, is it's really difficult to criticize them or their arguments because of what they've been through and who they are. But unfortunately, the fact is they have an anecdotal experience with this, a very public and tragic one, yes, but the plural of anecdote is not data.
Right.
You know, we have this problem as humans of looking at somebody who has had an experience like this, or, you know, maybe green tea cured your aunt's cancer.
Right.
You know, but that's an anecdote. That's not data. That isn't going to be the case in every situation, and it's a really poor point to be building policy off of.
But at the same time, data can be so easily manipulated, and we just don't trust data, like we illustrated earlier. Like the data that the left uses on gun control, well, we're not like other countries.
Well,
their data is probably right, just as John Lott's data is probably right, and then everybody just goes, I don't know what to believe, so I'm just going to go into tribalism. But I totally agree with your point, is that anecdotes and personal experiences have somehow, in this age, trumped reason, logic, facts, data, research. Expertise is really underappreciated. And that's sort of the problem with these kids, is that they're not experts.
Right. They have the right to voice their opinion. That's just wrong. You can just be wrong. It's
Right.
okay. You know, and hopefully, you know, as they grow older and learn new information, hopefully, you know, they will be able to form their opinion better. I hope that guy doesn't drop out of high school. Hope he goes to a college go to college, takes a critical thinking class, possibly learn and meet interesting people and talk to people who has a different opinion, and puts that, you know, argumentative style behind him and grows as a person.
Yeah. There's a Colorado legislator who was in Columbine and now is for gun rights.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like a state legislator, I think. I don't think he's a congressman, but he's in a representative body.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, he's not. He may not think the same thing in 10 years.
Right. Yeah.
That's part of growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is, you know, it's okay. Say what you want. You can say what you want. You say, you know, it's just more of it goes to the same ilk as trying to have a conversation with someone on the internet that does not want to challenge themselves or be able to, and I doubt that he could argue the other side. That's another thing.
Right.
I bet if challenged, it's like, hey, can you argue for rights? How about this? I'll argue for gun control. You argue for Second Amendment rights.
Yeah. Glenn Beck has set off part of this correlation. Another cause that is, you know, some people on the conservative right, the social conservatives, are pushing, is that part of the problem is the disintegration of families and fatherless kids. And that our society is seeing more school shootings because less kids have fathers, and that and again, in correlation to a lot of these kids, they don't have fathers in their lives. Although the Sandy Hook shooter, his dad was involved in his life. So it's not the rule, but he argued, and I've seen several different people pick it up across the spectrum, saying this is, again, it's like a Rorschach test. People take what's in the news and just apply their biases to it and say, this is why I'm right. But I do wonder if there is some merit to the fact that a lot of these kids don't have strong male presences in their life, that the family units have disintegrated, that this kid had to be taken in by a family friend. She felt sorry for the kid after his mom died. He had no one else in the family to kind of take him in. So people without a strong family unit don't generally fare well mentally, with self-esteem, with a lot of things in life. So do you think that a generation of kids without fathers or weak male presences in their life, or the disintegration of the nuclear family, had anything to do with school shooting in general?
Okay. A good book for, if you want to read about this, I suggest reading the book The War Against Boys, to understand that the school system and everything has flipped and changed, that the school system most public education school system is not a good place for young men and young males. If you have any doubts of what it is, or don't want to pick up this book, listen to one of George Peterson's talks, and when he talks about how some of these males that grow up and has never heard an encouraging word in their life.
Go back and listen to episode 261 and 262 of this podcast.
Yeah, and it goes this just shows you just the attack that has happened on the young male self, going through just public education, but majority of males get through that somehow. And they don't become school shooters. Do I feel it's like I said, it's so small, so drop in a bucket. There's not enough correlation to it. It's it's not insufficient data. I can't because there's so many people who are so many males that are products of single mothers that have gone on to do great things.
Right.
And there's people who have had terrible family lives, who had grow up as has been orphans, stuff like that, have gone off and also done things in their lives.
Right.
So I think one question that I'd have here for somebody advocating for that theory, for that hypothesis of everything here, then why haven't we seen a wave of this preceding 20, 30 years within the black community? Because fatherless households, honestly, were first in the black community, and now it's also happening in the white community more and more. But for some reason, we don't have this rash of school shooters. They're young, troubled black men in high schools.
Yeah, there may not be school shooters, but that's because the largest population of people dying are young black men. And gun deaths. The largest, 75% of gun deaths are suicides, usually by men.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second largest is young black men between the age of 16 and 25 killing each other on the streets because of drug laws. So the
way the police react to those to the situations.
Absolutely.
So it's a layer of it. As you see different layers of it, but also with Paul's you also see good in the Irish community also happened too around the same time as well. I just want to point that out loud. Not saying that I'm just trying to discount. I'm just trying to say that there was also the white Irish people also had a struggle with that as well. Because they were also attacked with black people.
Well, right, but it's definitely something that the focus is more on the black community.
Yeah. I just want to show how I can cross through race and stuff like that. But even though all these issues, there's a lot of different people who, grew up and they did tackle themselves on. So like I said, to me, insufficient data.
Yeah. I want to read something from Michael Ian Black, a comedian of all people, but he's been leading the charge on Twitter for something that I have been saying for Michael Ian Black. Let's see what he was in.
Wasn't he an Ed?
He's he's the guy that if you saw him, you'd go, "Oh yeah." Let's see. He's.
I don't mean you look up. Just keep going.
Yeah, like I don't know. You see, I don't know what he's been in, but he's just like
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
Like
all right,
Google
yeah,
him, you'll
yeah,
know,
yeah,
you'll see.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks.
So he wrote an opinion piece on February 21st in the New York Times. I'm going to read parts, if not a lot of this, because he had some really good points in this. I used to have a one-liner. If you want to emasculate a guy friend when you're at a restaurant, ask him everything that he's going to order, and then when the waitress comes, order for him. It's funny because it shouldn't be easy to rob a man of his masculinity, but it is. What do these shootings have in common? Guns, yes, but also boys. Girls aren't pulling the trigger, it's boys. It's almost always boys. America's boys are broken, and it's killing us. The brokenness of the country's boys stand in contrast to its girls, who still face an abundance of obstacles, but go into the world increasingly well-equipped to take them on. The past 50 years have redefined what it means to be female in America. Girls today are told that they can do anything, be anyone. They've absorbed the message. They're outperforming boys in school at every level. But it isn't just about performance. To be a girl today is to be the beneficiary of decades of conversation about the complexities of womanhood, its many forms and many expressions. Boys, though, have been left behind. No commensurate movement has emerged to help them navigate toward a full expression of their gender. It's no longer enough to be a man. We no longer even know what that means. Too many boys are trapped in the same suffocating, outdated model of masculinity where manhood is measured in its strength, where there is no way to be vulnerable without being emasculated. Amen. Where manliness is about having power over others. They're trapped, and they don't even have the language to talk about how they feel about being trapped, because the language that exists to discuss the full range of human emotions is still viewed as sensitive and feminine. Men feel isolated, confused, and conflicted about their natures. Many feel that the very qualities that used to define them, their strength, aggression, and competitiveness, are no longer wanted or needed. Many others never felt strong or aggressive or competitive to begin with. We don't know how to be, and we're terrified. But to even admit our terror is to be reduced because we don't have a model of masculinity that allows for fear or grief or tenderness or the day-to-day sadness that sometimes overtakes us all. Case in point, a few days ago, I posted a brief thread about those thoughts on Twitter, knowing I would receive hateful replies in response. I got dozens of messages impugning my manhood, the mildest of them calling me a soy boy, a common insult among the alt-right that links soy intake to estrogen. And so the man who feels lost but wishes to preserve his fully masculine self has only two choices: withdrawal or rage. We've seen what withdrawal and rage have the potential to do. School shootings are only the most public of tragedies. Others on a smaller scale take the place across the country daily. Another commonality among shooters is a history of abuse towards women. To be clear, most men will never turn violent. Most men will turn out fine. Most will learn to navigate the deep waters of their feelings without ever engaging in any form of destruction. Most will grow up to be kind, but many will not. We will probably never understand why any one young man decides to end the lives of others, but we can see at least one pattern, and that pattern is glaringly obvious. It's boys. I believe in boys. I believe in my son. Sometimes, though, I see him, 16 years old, swallowing his frustration, burying his worry, stomping up the stairs without telling us what's wrong, and I want to show him what it looks like to be vulnerable and open, but I can't, because I was a boy once too. There has to be a way to expand what it means to be a man without losing our masculinity. I don't know how we open ourselves up to rich complexity of our manhood. I think we would benefit from the same conversations girls and women have been having for the past 50 years. I would like men to use feminism as an inspiration in the same way that feminists use the civil rights movement as theirs. I'm not advocating a quick fix because there isn't one, but we have to start the conversation. Boys are broken and I want to help. I think if you're a man in this audience listening to that, there were several points where the hair stood on the arms and you went, ooh, that hits me deep. Like,
yeah. And well, the other thing is like because it rings true, and a lot of guys are like, I went through like a huge rough patch in my 20s, and even being in a wall, it helps me more be able to express my emotions, be open to people. Like when people like, hey, I feel your anger. It's like, hey, if I'm not angry, I'll tell you if I'm angry. I'll tell you if I'm sad. I'll tell you. You know, I'm a hard read, and I get weirded out by some men that do not like me expressing my emotions, and when they get put off and back up and like, whoa, what are you doing? What do you mean? You're just like, calm down. I'm like, dude, I am expressing my emotion, and if you don't like it, then I don't know if we can be friends.
Right.
I'm going to express my emotions. I'm going to be open with you, and guess what? A couple of times we hang out enough, I'm probably going to hug you and touch you. Most men walk around without ever feeling like just another human's physical touch. And I'm not saying it has to be like I'm not talking about sexual touching. I'm just talking about just companionship touching. That's why like a lot of guys who are sad and stuff like that, I recommend them doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Just for the simple fact of, one, you get to work out. Two, that physical contact with another man, it just simply, or just another person, it just helps you just like relate to the humanity that's inside you.
Yeah.
That wants you to open up. That's why a lot of BJJ guys are very open, and they're very, you're all about helping everybody else. Because most men, majority, if you're not in a relationship, you haven't touched someone that wasn't a family member.
When I was going through my divorce, I read the love languages, the 5 love languages, which everybody should read. It's a Christian book, but it like, just go take the test. Like, that's all you need to do. Go to the 5 love languages website and take the test. And people express their love through 5 ways. It's through touch, through words, through acts of service, through gift giving, and I always forget that 5th one. Acts of service, touch. Can you look that up? I don't know if you guys have the ability to look something up, but here.
Get on my tablet. Yeah, keep talking.
I have
with autocorrected youngling's beer. Sorry,
youngling's beard.
Beer.
Oh, okay.
Younglings, yeah.
Quality time. So I'm like 10 out of 10 on physical touch and 8 out of 10 on words. And my ex-wife was 10 out of 10 on receiving gifts, and I was 1 out of 10 on receiving gifts. And so she would bring me these little trinkets that she had collected through the day and give them to me, and I would say, why would you bring me this junk? Now I have to throw this away. This is an item I don't need. And to her, I was rejecting her love.
Mm-hmm.
And so she stopped. When she would walk up, I would touch her hip. So she stopped walking up to me. She stopped sitting next to me. She withdrew touch. We lost those conversations. It really helped me understand how I give and receive love. And it didn't hit me until I was about 8-9 months out of my divorce. I had not been around anyone that had touched me. Maybe like a hug with a family member here or there. But I just remember going to church one Wednesday, and this church that I was going to at the time was a Methodist church, so it was full of 70, 80-year-old women and guys. And we got in a prayer circle, and I remember holding hands with 2 80-year-old women who were brushing up next to me, and my body lit up because it was the first touch of a human being that I had had in months. And the skin hunger, I don't have it as much now, just because I don't have the self-esteem and ego wounds that I have the self-esteem now. I don't have those ego wounds. I have a very fulfilling life. But 2014 me was very much in this place that he's talking about. And I've been in that place so many times in my life where I have so much going on in my inner life and I can't express it. And along the way, I learned that I don't have a choice. And this podcast has pushed me. And in doing this podcast and going to therapy for a couple years and reading books I've read more self-help books than any normal person should. I've learned that I have to be emotionally expressive. I am a highly sensitive person. I am a person that loves people, but I also need time away, and I need to express what I am feeling on the inside, or else I become very angry. And I don't feel that I am different than most men. I think most men have a very rich inner life that is very dead and dormant, and it leads to a very sad life, and they don't know how to handle it, and so they retreat. They withdraw. And I've picked on video games, but video games and sports and some of these ways are really good ways to withdraw. Now, video games and fantasy football leagues can be great ways to connect with people. Shared interests can be a great way to connect with people. The Discord, the Facebook groups, We Are Libertarians, is a great way for you to connect to like-minded people. We've built a great community. And one thing that as I have changed, my friend group and the people that come on this podcast, as Harry said, have changed. Because I demand people to say, because I'm crazy, I go, am I crazy? I need you to explain my emotions to me. And, you know, like Greg and I have had a falling out, but I will be forever grateful to Greg for the endless patience that he had for me those years after my divorce, explaining to me, just listening to me. And like that friendship with other people is so rare amongst men, and yet so necessary. Because if you don't vent, then you will blow up. And you need to understand the underlying portions of your brain that cause you to do the things that you do. And so it's easy to look at somebody like a school shooter and hate them, and you should, because what this kid did was evil. But as I have become more in touch with my emotional side, with my empathetic side, I look at somebody like this school shooter who has no one in the world, and the one person they did have was a mother who's probably sick and didn't have the energy, because boys take so much more energy than women. Like, I spent the afternoon with my nieces. They are great, and they are a handful, but they are nothing like a boy. A little boy has... It's a lot of need. And that doesn't go away. We still have that. And when you have somebody who is hyperactive and angry and can't express that and is isolated and lost in the world and has never been given the tools to express that, to the point that when they call 911 and they say, I'm in a bad place, my mother is dead, and I don't know how to handle this. And the world goes, hug your stepbrother, you're fine.
Yep.
What options are left for somebody like that to take the pain in their soul out? So it's not an excuse, because it's an evil act. But there has to be avenues for when somebody like this doesn't know what to do and reaches out and says, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to blow up. We have to start listening, because this is why this is going to keep happening. And Billy Graham passed away, and was somebody that was very important in my life. I went in 1996 to see his crusade, and I hated every second of it. My mom forced me to go because I had become an atheist, pretty young, and I was at the lowest point in my life. My parents, my entire nuclear and extended family eroded from 13 to 15. And I identify with a Nicholas Cruz because I understand what it's like to be completely lost in the world. And no one is there to help you. And the depths of despair that I went through at 17. I'm an imploder, I'm not an exploder. So my rage was turned inward, and I have spent most of my life as a very suicidal person. And one day, I was 17, and I'd become a Buddhist because it had given me peace. And so I decided I wasn't an atheist anymore. And then I started reading into Christianity a little bit after 9/11, which shook me a lot. But I'm driving home one day in November of 2001, and I didn't know how I was going to kill myself, but I had made the decision that I was going to do it because I didn't have anything else in my life. I didn't have any way to pull myself up out of that hole. And I remember walking in the door, and my mom was home at 5 in the afternoon, which she never was, and she was watching Billy Graham on the TV, which, why was there a Billy Graham crusade on at 5 in the afternoon? I don't know. So I went down to my room, and I started watching, and I watched it till 6 o'clock, and I decided that I would go to church that night because it was a Wednesday. And it was that night, sitting in the sanctuary of my local church, that I decided to become a Christian and felt something significant. I feel that, like, I am so prone to disbelief and questioning that I was given the gift of feeling something so significant that I have never once doubted the existence of God since that night. And went to youth group that night, had a prayer circle, and I don't know, it gave me a sense of belonging. And it was that night that I connected to my church, to my youth group, and to Jesus Christ. And everything that has been good in my life came out of that experience, because it was a framework for me to learn what it meant to be a decent human being. And what people get out of Christianity is the command to love other people. And so I learned how to become more gentle, to become more loving, to become more caring, to become... I'm working on humility right now. But it wasn't until my divorce that I learned that love had to be turned inward. And the grief that came out of that experience over the last 4 years has made me infinitely better because it put me on my knees. And all of those things that I had to learn in my early 20s, I had to experience again the last 4 years. And the constant presence of God in my life has been so significant that I just can't help but be a different person than the one I was as a young man. So I think about Billy Graham and the impact that he had on people, and I know that, you know, oh, well, he was worth $25 million. I read it on YouTube or Yahoo. I heard this about him. He said this one thing about the Jews once. There's billions of people in this world who have had an experience because one man decided in his youth that he would dedicate himself to an idea, and he would spend the rest of his life spreading that idea that would positively impact people's lives. it impacted me. And I just think that if libertarians were more like Billy Graham, talking in a very simple way, illustrating their points in a friendly manner with an air of humility. You can't read about Billy Graham or watch a video about Billy Graham and not be touched by his humility. And we are so bad at that. We are so bad at not thinking that we understand everything in the world and this is how it should be ordered and you just need to get in on the train, right? He was persuading people, and sometimes we are too forceful in our language. But his boldness to say exactly what he thought at all times made him significant. And I referenced it earlier. Excuse me. I'm crying like a pussy. But libertarians at some point have to knock off the shit. Stop posting about how much the Libertarian Party sucks, how much this guy sucks. I'm guilty of it too. I love to make fun of Liberty Hangout on Twitter. And start explaining our ideas in a bold manner. Because if you decide that you're going to start explaining what people's rights are with an air of humility, if you're going to... It doesn't matter what your idea is. It's not even libertarianism. If you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you are a believer in cryptocurrency, if you are a believer in Discord, speak with boldness. And do it in a way that persuades people. Do it happily. Explain why this thing makes people's life better. And the amount of people that will be impressed by your humility, your boldness. I mean, it's a ballsy thing to get up in front of a stadium of people and say, there is one way to heaven. You can only go to heaven by believing in Jesus Christ. If you believe in anything else, then you will go to hell. If you're a Muslim, you will go to hell. That's a bold statement for somebody like Billy Graham to get up in front of 50,000 people with millions of people watching on TV and say that. And the man is beloved. And you may look at that and you may go, well, that's not the ideology that I believe in. But people listened to him because he was bold. And he believed in something. And he had character. And he was a man of virtue. You may not believe what he believed. You may not believe in the virtues that he believed in. But he lived what he said. And he spoke with boldness. And men, it sucks out there for us. And we're finally starting to talk about it. The best thing that you can do in your life, read. First and foremost, read. Scary Close by Donald Miller is great. The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown is great. Scanning my bookshelf. I should have prepared a book list, but I didn't plan on talking about this. Books that nourish your soul. Books that are not history and politics and war, and read something that will make your emotional life and mental life better. Go to church or a mosque. If you're not a religious person, if you're just an atheist, if you're an atheist, so be it. At least you've wrestled with the question. But if you're not, start wrestling with the question of God and spirituality, and don't be afraid of asking people questions. Find some meaning, and then start speaking boldly about it. And by doing that, when we find meaning, when we start speaking boldly, when we start living out the values that we believe in, we're going to be fine. But we cannot start until we just admit, I'm wasting my time doing nothing. and I'm going to die in 30 to 40 to 20. Kevin Smith almost had a heart attack. He had a massive heart attack and wrote this beautiful note on Facebook saying, I've lived a great life. If I die tomorrow, if I died today, I just thought about all the people that I love and all the things that I've done and how cool it's been. And it's because he tried. And if you never try, then when you're laying on the table, I wish I hadn't wasted so much time. So, sorry for making this more serious than I thought it was going to be, but I just read that and just that article, that opinion piece really punched me in the gut. What about you guys?
Your entire statement, dude. That was, I never really watched Billy Graham that much growing up, but I think hearing your words and how what you went through as a teenager, I went through some of the similar aspects, and I almost could like I said, like, it hit, like, just like people in the chat, they're talking about this hit real close to home, because a lot of people, like, they have this same thing too, like,
Right.
And even I remember, like, the time, like, when I was having all some issues, that when I did finally find my church home, that is what, that's where I really felt home again.
Right.
It felt right. It felt, this is, it's, so, and I'm glad that that's what you found, that's what centered you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I say I'm a Christian, and I've not talked a lot about it because a lot of, as I've gone through my divorce, I've not wanted to say I'm a Christian because I've not been proud of how I've acted, and I didn't want to be a bad witness. And I've made some massive life changes over the last few months, just because I want to be, if I say I believe in something, then I should live those beliefs. And it's just important. And temptation is everywhere, but turning down temptation, you go, I could have had that moment of self-gratification. Like, I went, little things, not just things like sexual things, but even in terms of sex, it's fine. But it's kind of not fine. Like, once you, you're going through the motions with somebody and you're like, I don't want to marry this person, but now I got to get out of this, and this is super awkward because we're attached. Like, then you're hurting yourself, you're hurting them. But even down to the little things, like, I had broccoli instead of tater tots for lunch the other day. Because I literally sat there and I went, I can have tater tots now, and they taste really good. I love tater tots.
Mm-hmm.
But if I have the broccoli, I have less of a chance of being sick when I'm old. And so I had the broccoli. And wanting to be old is why I'm able to make those choices. And the reason it hits home is because we have unmoored ourselves. We are full postmodern. We don't have truth. If you believe in truth, you're not allowed to talk about it. Everything's relative. And I just don't believe that. And I think most libertarians don't believe that. I mean, maybe they disagree with the religion, but there are just things that are true.
Yeah.
I have an inherent right to own a gun, and I have an inherent right to protect myself. And if you don't agree with me, I'm sorry, you're wrong, but I'm not going to budge.
Right. And I'll speak as the token atheist in the room. I believe in truth. There are things that can be demonstrated to be true. I come to my truths in a different way than Christians come to their truths, but
you still have a value system that you try to live by. You still have wrestled with the idea. You still are,
right.
And I don't make the mistake that everybody has to think like I do. I certainly recommend Christianity to everybody because I can tell you is the best thing in my life. And second is like libertarianism, like in terms of ideology, and they're so hand in hand. But I look at it, and being a Christian makes me go, I see a Nicholas Cruz, and I can call him evil because evil exists, and he did something horrible. But what about that person is causing him to do that? What inside him is hurting, and how do we fix that for the next person?
Right.
So they don't make the next mistake. And do we as a community, do we as individuals in a society have a responsibility for somebody like that? In that, when you come in contact with every person that you meet, are you treating them like a human being, or are you treating them like an inconvenience? And when you treat people the way Christ treated people, he would treat Nicholas Cruz with love and tenderness and affection and say, why are you angry? Let me listen. And then Nicholas Cruz wouldn't kill 17 people. And if he would, maybe there'd at least be a better chance that he wouldn't, because he would have had somebody to listen. Had one of those police officers said, what's going on, man? Let me recommend you go talk to this person. Had those police officers taken an extra 5 minutes, maybe that he directed him when he was so clearly reaching out for help. And I know in the world today there are so many people and there's so many needs, and I'm so busy. Like, busy with what? Playing Battleship on Facebook Messenger? Like, you're too busy to, like, have a conversation with somebody that clearly is hurting? Like, what are you really busy with? Because let's be real honest. When you put eternity at the center of your life, everything that we talk about on this podcast gets really fucking silly. The arguments just become silly. You know, we have them, but like arguing with someone on Facebook, is it really worth it? Being right so hard that this person unfriends me, and then wearing that as a badge of honor? Like, what did that achieve? Right. You know?
Internet arguments won.
And I just think we're coming to this place as a society where we're all shaking each other going, what are we doing? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Where are we headed? You know, you have, like, we're all headed to a really bad place because we're just unmoored from basic decency. And everybody is now kind of going, this might be a problem. All right, let's wrap up. Final thoughts for this episode.
Want me to go?
Yeah, I'll go first.
First thing, when it comes to tater tots and cookies, all things in moderation. If you had broccoli for lunch, you can have a little bit of tater tots or a little bit of tachos once in a while. It's okay to have a cheat meal.
Right.
And if you don't know how to manage your food, follow The Rock. Just shrink his portions down to what you can manage, but he'll show you how to really cheat in your cheat meal. A couple of things. Reading things up for this episode, I said I would bring this up, but up until the 94 assault weapons ban in this country, what they did notice from a lot of the surveys and stuff that they took, that gun ownership, may have been a lot of guns, but really only at that time 24% of people really owned guns. When the assault weapons ban finally went into place and everything started going through, that's when gun ownership per person really started to kick into gear and go up.
Right.
It was more of like the moment the government started banning it, the more people who wanted to own guns, period.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also read up on the assault weapon ban and realize which gun that it did ban, and that considering that most AR-15s would have passed and did sell under the assault weapons ban, they just sold in a different type of configuration.
Right.
The other thing to bring up too is when it comes out to when people pop up statistics about different countries, especially the UK, you have to watch out because the UK has been shown to report all their gun death and gun crime statistically differently than anywhere else. Like if they don't get a conviction, they don't really call that a gun death. Just so you have to really jump into their hard numbers. Like, no, I don't want your statistics. Like, I want to know how many people who were died from a gunshot wound or something like that.
Right.
Because they mostly go for convictions done in court. So if it wasn't convictions and stuff like that, they really didn't count those that much. Or if there was multiple people, they counted it as one murder. It's one of those things that they did funky accounting work.
Right.
Let's see here. The other thing is with because when you start really going into the other things, like you can use these things to win in an argument, but at the same time, it's really not about winning. But like you can tell that like some people just don't want to talk about the aspects of this. It's just like everyone brings up Brady and the Brady laws and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, that guy got shot by a .22 little pistol.
Right. Tiny little gun.
Tiny little pistol, and he went after all guns from a little tiny little pistol handgun. Because let's see, but like I said, I'll get most of these links are on the Trello, so hopefully like Spangle will throw some of those out, and I'll bring up some of those back and on Low Key Wall, because Low Key Wall is back. Screw all you haters who think I wasn't going to come back. I just got busy, and a lot of things going wrong with Liberty and Chill and stuff like that. It's my fault because, like I said, this ITIL thing has been kicking my butt. All those in the Discord that have heard me complain, and like I had that last bit with Greece because Greece sucks as a country. I had to send an NDA under duress because of that. But anyways,
what?
Yeah, I can't even get into it. Anyways, Greece sucks.
Disclose now, please.
Greece sucks. Okay.
All right.
In order to take the ITIL certification at my house, because I want to do it at my house because I'm stuck at the home all day. I can't really take my daughter to the testing center, so they gave me a bit of software from Greece to use to be able to take the test at my house, and it kept crashing my Windows machine, and they kept trying, and I had to like troubleshoot them and show and the only way I was able to get it to work, which I luckily I had the Power Mac, right, from that Spangle's Mac computer at the house. And I booted into that sucker, so they kept going, hold on, because it's a fresh install. There's no firewalls installed, no antivirus.
So the Mac worked while the Windows crashed.
I used the Mac because they wouldn't troubleshoot a Windows machine. They had all these different layers to go through, but when it went to Mac, right, when I used a Mac, their troubleshooting steps instantly went to, hey, we're going to use a different software. And they gave me a different software. But for Windows, they wanted to troubleshoot. They wanted me to uninstall
Just
everything.
for the record, which machine worked?
It was the
Mac. Which
was
operating system?
High Sierra. It was High Sierra.
Not Windows 10. Okay.
Yeah.
Paul, final thoughts for the episode.
Hold on, I'm done. I got one more thing.
All right.
Shout out to all the people who are out there, especially Superfan Larry. I hope you guys are okay down there in Louisville. Hope you guys stay dry. Hope you.
Yeah.
Northern
Indiana's getting bad too.
Yeah, we see all that, and it's. I feel bad. I hope you guys are okay. I haven't seen you on Discord in a while, so I'm worried.
Paul?
Well, it's been great being here. Hopefully it won't be the only time.
Yeah, you did great. I'm going to definitely have you back.
Yeah, hopefully a little bit more lighthearted in the future.
I literally told Harry, I was like, we're going to have a more light show, more chit. Yeah. Because
things got a little intense there.
Yeah.
But
what can you do?
No.
Every once in a while, you need to weep on an episode of We're Libertarians. It's otherwise... There needs to be a fight, some weeping. This is the full range of emotions in the world of podcasting.
No. Well, I am currently serving as the secretary for the LPMC. Those of you that are listening, they're in the Marion County area. I do hope to see you next month at the business meeting. I love seeing new faces at the business meetings. At Liberty and Chill, if you are, I think our range now is 100 miles or so.
Yeah.
If Christy can make it, you have no excuse. Come on down, hang out, have fun. It's a great, Liberty and Chill has been great in my life. I owe Harry a job. He's like, it's.
Yeah, it's a fun way to connect to like-minded people. It's what we were talking about earlier. Humans need community, and it's a great way to build community. And I'm going to get your email before you leave so we can get back to those people that have emailed us.
Right.
Putting you in charge of that.
Okay.
You're now responsible, just so they can at least get an email from somebody. And if you want to get in touch, editor@wearelibertarians.com and get on that list for Liberty and Chill in your area, then let me know.
Yeah, we are also working on getting the air quotes screening process implemented so that we have some idea of who you are, where you are. And
Yeah, we like if you're gonna have an event that we're promoting in an area, you know, like let's say it's in Atlanta and it's Stone that wants to in the Atlanta area put together one. So we love Stone, we know Stone, go for it. But if you're some rando and unknown, you know, if you're Elvis Presley in Arkansas, I want to know, you know, literally there's a libertarian running for office in Arkansas right now, Elvis D. Presley.
That's awesome.
I wanted to ask Roger. I didn't get a chance to today, but he's run for a bunch of offices. So yeah, we just want to get some idea and have a conversation with you just to like, hey, are you crazy? Before we put you on our website and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
we don't want anybody showing up for Liberty and Chill and getting murdered.
Yeah. Or doing like, hey, let's do Liberty Chill at the bar that I own.
Right. I don't have a problem with supporting small business owners. But all right. Other thoughts, Paul?
No, that's about all I have.
All right, well, I'm excited to go to Washington, D.C. If you're going, please. I haven't heard from anybody who's going, but I've got 2,000 business cards and a sign and all my road gear, you know, the Zoom H6 donated on the Amazon wish list 2 years ago, thanks to Christy Avery. So, you know, people like Christy Avery, huge supporters of the show, Jason Doolittle, Craig DaCosta, Brandon Luke especially Jason and Christy over the years have helped us get so much equipment, and they're making this possible. Craig DaCosta donated to it. You guys are awesome. If you two will just like talk for a second so I can pull up the Patreon, because I want to read off all the names. I mean, hell, we're at 3 hours at this point.
Going to 4.
Only the patrons would be listening at this point anyway. So
The hardcore.
right. So our $25 folks, new one, Jacob Klingen Smith. Thank you so much. Eric Neff, Rick Irvine, Stone Aldridge, Brantley Spicer, Nick Economopoulos, Chad Oakage, Joey Turner, Carly Ernst, Brandon Kester, Christian Emmons, Dan Dunbar, Christopher Brokoff, and Todd Singer. Thank you guys for being $25 a month donors. Subscribers, I mean. Joshua Sexton, or else the IRS will get me. $10 a month. Joshua Sexton. Albert. Oh, man, Albert. Listen, you know I'm not good with names. I'm so sorry. Albert.
Come on.
Look at this. All
That's
right.
why I have Paul. That's why
Listen,
I have Paul.
I'm sorry, Albert, but there's no way
Yeah,
I'm...
use Paul. I'll butcher that. And
Bruh,
all those on low-key well know I butcher names.
Bro, send me an email and tell me how to say your last name. It's very Polish, and I'm so sorry. Albert Morkrakowicz?
Maybe we should take you up to the Pierogi Fest up in northern Indiana, meet some more Polish people.
Yeah, my best girlfriend I ever dated, Anna Prisbiz. Perserbish.
Yeah. Let's go Pierogi Fest.
Tom Howd. I really need to learn the names of the people that make this possible. Tom Howd, AJ Valaza, Ray Wolf, Jordan Laycock, Lauren Moss, Mark English, Derek Glenn. Oh, sorry. Oops. John Brett, Logan Knoll, Chris Murray, Ryan Hold, you old son of a bitch, Joshua Laughlin, Samuel Alexander, Jeremy Franklin, Brian Kloss, Joe Benavides, Eric Anderson, Sarah Potter, Eric Bartline, David Stovall, Jess Nixon, Justin Mitchell, Derek Mishu, Mike Tront, Zach Felker, James Darling, Brian Travis, Chris Lane, Ryan Clancy, Ken Walker, Rebecca Cash, and David Anderson at $10. The subscription, you guys, those are the people in our community. If you want to join the Dear Leaders Court, then you sign up for $10 and you get access to the private Facebook group. So, all right, guys, thanks so much for joining us on this episode, and we will see you from Washington, D.C. the next time we talk. All right.